Everyone ready to get started?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, I am calling this evening, June 4th's meeting to order. This evening, we are starting a little bit early. We have a pretty hefty agenda, starting the first hour and a half or so with our interviews for our architectural firms. So let us start with a roll call for council, please.
We'll note for the record that Councilmember Chmielewski is absent. Councilmember Cerna.
Here.
Councilmember Barton.
Here.
Councilmember Elam.
Here.
Councilmember Fry.
Here.
Vice President Kingsley. Here. President Sokolowski.
Here.
Mayor Aronson.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Just as far as announcements go, Brittany, did you receive any public information from the May 21st meeting or anything for this evening's meeting in the public? Okay, so nothing came in via email or phone calls. Thank you. All right. So we will get started with our presentation. So this evening on the schedule are our 5 candidates for architectural firms related to the public safety facility projects. The firms have been assigned interview time slots, and they'll be brought in by our team at their appropriate time. I am going to kind of set some standards for them so that they are succinct in their answers, stay focused on the questions that we're asking, so that we can garner as much information in that short period of time as possible. Is everyone okay with that strategy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's start with the Schrader Group.
Good evening. How are you?
Really?
I think I'll take this spot.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Just to keep on time, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming in and giving us your time this evening. I'm just going to kind of set up the stage for how we're going to do this. Council has been provided questions from our key stakeholders to ask specifically related to the RFPs that we received from you. What I'll ask you guys to do is kind of stay succinct with your answers to the question. We don't really need you to go into the whole background and experience and all that, since we have that in the RFP, unless you find something very pertinent that you want to highlight in your answers. So based on that, we want to maximize the time, so we allow you to shine in that time frame.
Okay.
So does anyone want to get started with a question for the Schrader Group?
Can we get some introductions real quick for who we have here in front of us?
That would be great. So real quickly, I'm David Schrader with Schrader Group, and we're here in the Spring Mill Complex, so right here in Conshohocken. Jimmy?
Jimmy Edwards with Davis Kane Architects, providing fire station expertise.
And I'm Doug Perry with the Schrader Group. I'm a project manager.
Jeff Matchik from Snyder Hoffman, and we're the mechanical and electrical engineers.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, can you tell me why has your firm responded to the borough's RFP? What is it about this project that was interesting to you?
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to start with that, and if anybody else wants to hit, they can. There's one image here on the back side of this placemat, and it has a image of the United States, and the peach-colored, or depending on what color you see, are the facilities that we've done throughout the country that are public safety. So those include any kind of public safety, including emergency operations centers, 911 centers, fire stations, law enforcement complexes, and so on. So we have a national capability of this, but we love doing these projects in Pennsylvania as well. The fact that we're right here in Conshohocken is a perfect opportunity for us to give back to the community, hopefully build something that's great that can help us when we need help as well.
Your firm came in hot on the higher side. You were the most expensive out of all of them. We said we weren't selecting on price alone. Obviously, a big project like this, why would you? What justifies that?
Well, A, first, it's good to know that, and hopefully what was written in there was that all of our fees are negotiable, so we're happy to negotiate on fees. What I think that the principal who was preparing that fee schedule was doing was looking more or less at a percent of construction cost as a starting point. So if we want to work as a team and work back to effort specifically, we can reduce that significantly.
Okay.
How do you go about selecting a contractor?
We'll probably have to do Pennsylvania's traditional four-part prime bidding process, so it likely will be a public bidding process. And there's an innuendo to your question, I think, to some extent. We are normally in these cases required to take the lowest responsible bidder in each of the four prime categories: GC, plumbing, fire protection, HVAC, and electrical. What we try to do is to build in specific alternates to the project so that we can start to look at different contractors with different alternates and potentially try to steer the project just a little bit to see if there's a chance of picking a contractor. But it's very difficult to do in the lowest responsible bidder process.
Thank you.
Jump something you put at the appendix to this, that you understand that the borough is a member of the Delaware Valley Trust and liability requirements will be set by the trust. And then you proposed different language. Have you had experience where that was necessary, or why did you feel that you should put that in there?
If I remember correctly, that was bear with me for a second while I look at that.
It's the very end, it's the appendix.
Sorry, I will try not to do
I
this.
almost didn't read, I have to.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, I thought I was done, and then I saw that.
I do see it. Okay. It was an indemnification requirement is what it was.
Okay.
And so from our solicitor's standpoint, that is an indemnification that is uninsurable. So either you or we run the risk of using the language that's currently in there. That's the bottom line.
Okay. But you didn't have any personal experience needing that, or?
We have not.
Okay.
We have not.
Councilmember Frey asked a little bit about the budget and the costs and how you kind of went about that. Can you tell me what strategies that your company uses to keep projects on schedule, on budget, and then how do you mitigate delays and change order expenses?
Yeah, very good questions. And what I'm going to do, if it's okay, is start with one little image here. It's very colorful, and it's probably very small. That's why I have my readers on here. And then what I'd like to do is hand it over to Jimmy to talk just a little bit about costing for fire stations specifically. So what that image does is it has the pre-design process, then there's a red design phase. The design phase, as you saw in the document that we submitted, the proposal, is schematic design, design development, and construction documents. Those are the three typical processes. Then it has the bidding process and then construction. So you have twofold questions there. One was, how do we maintain the budget? Two was, how do we maintain the quality? And your point about quality was during design and then finally in construction. So you'll see in the cost estimating rack at the top of that, there's a pre-design cost estimate. That's going to be the budget set for the project. And you will either say that's an acceptable number or it's not an acceptable number, and we will modify the concept to match that. The job from that point forward, we have independent cost estimators that will review it at schematic design, design development, and then we typically do two in construction documentation. The goal of having the independent cost estimator is that they're looking at it without the rose-colored glasses that an architect does. And the intent is for them to look at it as if they're a contractor bidding this. So we'll get a good sense of what that cost is, adjust the project at each of those phases, and hopefully bring something into bid that's right around where you want it to be. The quality control is two parts here. That's the lower set of images there. First, we have an in-house quality control person who does only that. Her responsibility is to review drawings and specifications all day, every day. So the projects are submitted to her at schematic design phase, design development, and just at the end of construction documents, where besides the project manager, who is ultimately responsible for the quality, the QA person is required to do all of the redlining of the projects at each of those phases. So those are all picked up as part of the project, and hopefully, again, by the time the project goes out to bid, we'll do one last bid package check, and the project will be released as a bid project. During construction, becomes just slightly more difficult. In the construction phase, the contractors are ultimately responsible for the quality, but it is our job to oversee that the documentation is finding its way into the construction and to check that on a bi-weekly basis typically. Being right here and being the 2-minute drive or the 14-minute walk, I don't remember what Doug said was the last walk from the office to that site, we could be there any day that you want us to be there, and we'll be seeing this as we drive by every day, either whether somebody's commuting or whether somebody lives in the borough and is actually walking by it. So I think we have an advantage in that we're right here and can walk by that site every day. So that's where we see that. There is a cost question, though, about what these projects cost and how we stack that budget up from the beginning. I'm going to hand that to Jimmy.
Yeah, I've worked on personally over 50 fire stations, and every department has a varying budget, right? But they need a station. There's a high need, but there may not be the funds to meet that. We kind of put things in 3 buckets. There's quality, square footage, and your budget. And you have to massage those 3 things to get the facility based on that, the impact of those 3 things. For example, I would say like a high quality product for a fire station, which is all about response, is what we call bifold doors. They're the bifolds that open sideways, and it takes 8 seconds to open so the fire truck can get out and get wheels on the ground. Those things are also anywhere in the range of $50,000 each. And then we have your typical overhead doors, right? Those are somewhere in the range of $12,000 to $15,000. So you have 2 different types of doors for the front of the station. The problem with the overheads is they take 30 seconds to open. But if you don't have the budget for the bifold doors, then you end up with overhead doors. And we look at how we mitigate response time to the apparatus bay. Like, it takes 4 to 6 feet, you walk 4 to 6 feet every second to go from the dorm room or the day room to get into the base. You ideally want to get into the base with about 20 seconds to put on your gear, get in the truck, and hit the road, right? And if you're looking at a 60-second response time, you got 40 seconds to get from anywhere in the station. So we mitigate through layout, floor plan, and also quality of what we put into the station. Granite countertops, they're durable, long, easy to maintain, but if you don't have the money for that, we may have to do laminate. So it's just adjusting the quality, square footage, and budgets to get the station where you need it to be.
Can I ask a question directly from first responders? That might be a good one for you as well. But what challenges, and I'm going to read this verbatim because these were their questions, what challenges do you see in designing a public safety building when trying to meet needs for the next 50 to 100 years?
Yep, so I would say one of the challenges right now is it is a 24/7 facility. It needs to be up and running. It needs to be the last building standing. So it needs to be designed as such. And so some of the departments that we run into end up doing something called a pre-engineered metal structure. Those end up being 20 to 30 years, right? So it's all about designing hardened materials, using masonry where you can to make sure that this facility is going to last. But it's also about flexibility. So we try to say future ready, not future proof. Because the department, we don't know how the department's changed 50 years ago to today. It's massive change. The trucks alone have gotten 3 times the size that they were, right? So it's having the flexibility in the layout, being able to move spaces around, adjust dorm rooms, make them bigger, smaller. We do a lot of that conversation and programming to try to determine where the department's heading, ideally. Is the area growing? How large is it growing? Are you looking at adding a bay, right? So if we're thinking about doing that, we don't want to put a bunch of ancillary spaces at the end of the existing bay to only have you tear it down to put in a new bay. So those are kind of conversations that we have. Redundancy, adding additional conduit to the right-of-way because you may add more fiber or more data, or you might need something for a new alert system while your current alert system is maintained, right? So thinking about those kinds of things early on. It's cheaper to put them in today than it will be 25 years from now.
If you don't leave here with one thing from us, the one thing to remember would be we read into public safety facilities the 4 BOLS, and that is survivable, sustainable, durable, and flexible. And so those are the four that we try to focus on when we're looking at a public safety facility.
Can you talk a little bit about your sustainability pieces? We're, maybe looking to move in the next, 25, 50 years, maybe be all electric at that point, who knows? Like, what are you doing to prepare the building for that sustainability for that 50 to 100 years?
Yeah, I'll start, and again, we'll move to Jimmy, and then I think, Jeff, you should probably hit one of these. The majority, so we do all public work. That's what Schrader Group does. That's actually what our partner firm does. So everything is either a school, a municipal building, a state building, or something like that. And so all of these facilities are going to be around for 50-plus years. And so the best thing that we can do is build in the future to all of these. So a lot of these facilities, if they don't have photovoltaics, are getting the backbone for photovoltaics to make sure that they're ready to go. We've gone back, interestingly, to a number of facilities that are ground source heat pump or geothermal systems, as you probably know. And then, of course, code has just brought all of these facilities to a point where they are very, very economical to operate. And so all of our projects do that. You should probably talk specifically about fire for these folks, and then Jeff hit the same.
Yeah, we're actually together with Schrader Group working on a station that's going to have an EV for the city of Raleigh in North Carolina. And it's providing the infrastructure, the location for the additional panels, the additional transformer, and also knowing something I was going to touch on earlier about the generator running 24/7. Right now you can do natural gas or a diesel generator. Unfortunately, diesel or fossil fuels are a finite resource. So now you're going to have to go to electric at some point. So identifying where this bank of batteries is going to exist on your site, and again, making it future ready for that potential add at some point. Putting the infrastructure in, and then how do you lay the station out, right? One of the biggest concerns is thermal runaway on these EVs. Like, God forbid, an apparatus catches fire while in the fire station. How do we separate that? And that's something that we have conversations about. I go to several conferences for fire station design. We architects are sitting around. You think we talk about our families, but no, we're talking about fire station design. And what happens when one of these trucks has thermal runaway, and how do you separate so you maintain most of the building, and the only part that kind of falls away is where the apparatus is burning, right? So that's, again, one of those future-proofing ideas that we talk about.
I think a lot of times when you think about sustainability, right away the eyes go to the HVAC system. So that's a big part of it also. So we're always looking to design a sustainable system. At the same time, you guys need to be operating 24/7. You need a system you can maintain. It's a public building, as David mentioned. All of our work is in a public field too. So knowing that you have limited resources to maintain the buildings. Things have to be efficient, but they have to be easily maintained. They have to be durable. And all those are factors that we take in during the design.
Yeah, we've designed a LEED Gold fire station. And the current facility we're working with Schrader Group on is a LEED Silver facility. And it's providing low VOC, but manageable operational materials. It's providing infrastructure. If you don't put PV panels on the roofs, just providing the infrastructure for that at some point.
Last real quickie, to make sure that you folks get what you want, and whoever you have on your design committee, we just conducted a really great sustainability visioning session for that same project in City of Raleigh. We do that pretty regularly. We have a crew of sustainability folks only who focus on those kinds of sessions to put people together.
If you take this project, how many concurrent projects do you foresee yourself running?
Well, so the individuals or the company?
The company.
Okay, well, our company is 50 architects, and we're partnered with a 350-person firm, so we're actually 400 people. So we have a lot of projects as a whole. But the office is probably working on 10 different projects at one time total.
Okay, and then obviously you're quite familiar with the area, and especially where this project would be located. What do you foresee as some of the challenges that we're going to face?
We were actually talking about that. So having designed the school in my school district, having designed the township police station in my township, the worst thing that can happen is go to cocktail parties and have people say things that are not good about the project you're designing. So we have the same feeling about the project that we might put on the street here. A challenge to us is going to be what that architecture ends up looking like, because Conshohocken has become a very unique place and a mixture of a lot of cool architecture. We have a lot of our great historic stuff directly across and down the street, and we have some of the contemporary. So we have to talk to you about what the vision is from your standpoint. So I actually think that the aesthetics will be interesting to talk about. Might want to just talk about serviceability and drivability for the specific site.
Yeah, we target roughly just, you don't necessarily want a back-end station, especially in an urban area. So we look at how do we do pull-through stations? So how do you get around, making sure we provide the right turn radius. So we want to talk about what is the largest piece of apparatus that you might turn into the back of that station, which is usually a platform ladder. So just knowing that piece, and sometimes when you purchase that equipment, it comes with a turn radius, so we would ask for those documents. But making sure that we have separation of the apparatus and the public parking, make sure we have plenty of site for that. And providing, the parking for the shift changes between the fire departments when they come in. I don't know if you're on 24 or 48, 96, or 24, 48, if you have those kind of shifts for your particular department, but, just having those conversations too.
Adrian brought up a point, 50 architects. How do you actually determine who's like a project lead? So obviously you four are here tonight, and you're the face of the company, and, that's great, but how do you determine who the administration interacts with on a day-by-day basis? How does that look like, and what does it feel like for the people who are involved on the ground?
So we are principal-led, so you would still see the principal, and that's myself. But Doug Perry is our project manager, and he's your project manager for this project. And his background is public safety, including fire stations. So these are the folks that you'll see at any of these meetings.
So we talked a lot about the fire station. Have you had experience of blending fire and EMS, and what are some of those challenges that you see blending those two types of services?
I think two guys are going to fight for the answer.
You talk that one through.
So we've done a lot of EMS and fire co-location. We've also done police too. We've been in situations where the EMS and fire get along, and we've been in situations where they don't. So I think in this particular instance that there'll be comrades. Right? What we end up looking at from a facility standpoint is fire apparatus have, for example, they require one lead for the truck, right? A 20 amp lead that comes down. Fire or EMS trucks require 2 leads. So the bays are a little bit different. Fire actually sleep usually at the station in the dorm rooms. EMS come in to kind of take a break. They may have bedrooms, but it's just having those kind of conversations. But they're just 2 different kind of living quarters. So how do you meld those together? How do you share spaces, right? Because you can save some money if you share a day room, you share kitchen facilities, you share refrigerators, those kinds of things. But it's having a conversation with the 2 departments and understanding how they function and how we meld that together in one facility.
Doug, you want to add to that? You've got a couple similar.
I guess generally, the other thing is that the storage requirements between the two are going to be slightly different. There's a lot more secure storage on the EMS where they're storing drugs, or they may be storing drugs within the facility that we need to plan for. So that's one thing that we'll be looking at.
Okay, we're coming up to time. Is there anything that we may not have asked that you want to highlight about your presentation?
I think we talked about what the 4 goals are here, and understand that's what we focus on for any of these projects, so that's really important to us. We, as a firm, and I appreciate the comment about the fee, we're wide open to negotiation on that. We don't want to be the high, that's for sure, so we'd be more than happy to negotiate on the fee to make that work. We see that as stewardship of our own tax dollars. We have a number of people who live in the borough, and we also obviously pay for a space with quite a few employees right here in Conshohocken, so that's very important to us. And we're all going to walk by that every day, and we're going to hear from folks. So we want to make sure this is the best facility serving our people in the community. So that's about the extent of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counsel, are you satisfied with the answers? Okay, thank you very much for your
Thank
time
you.
this evening.
Thank you.
We didn't know what to expect, so thank you. This was very nice.
I really appreciate y'all coming in after business.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, next up on our list is MW Studios.
Get them up here.
Do podium. And then presentation-wise,
Question and answer.
excellent.
Presentation.
Can do that. Okay.
All right, thank you for coming in. We'll have you introduce yourself, set some standards here. We don't need you to summarize your RFP. What we want you to do is listen to the questions, try and answer them as succinct, and highlight your areas of expertise and what you're proud of. And then we'll go from there. Since we only have 25 minutes, we want to make sure we maximize your time to shine.
Sure.
Is that fair?
Sounds good.
All right, tell us who you are.
Okay, I am Evan Gray with MW Studios. MW Studios is an architecture firm out of Baltimore, Maryland, and we specialize in public safety architecture. So fire stations, police stations, emergency operations training centers, PSAPs, and then of course tactical villages and the like. We've conducted that practice since 2008. I myself joined in 2012 and haven't looked back since.
Evan, I'm curious, because you are from Baltimore, or that's where the firm is located, do you work with municipalities in Pennsylvania typically?
Absolutely.
And can you tell me a little bit about why your firm responded to this RFP specifically?
Yeah, so our core focus for projects is in the Mid-Atlantic region. We try to keep it within a 3-hour drive radius of things that we will aggressively pursue. So this fell right in that wheelhouse. It's approximately an hour and 45 minutes from our office. And most notably, we just completed work over in the city of Reading, and then we currently have a firehouse under construction in the township of Cumru as well.
I'll follow up on that Baltimore thing. The company was just in here, is about 2 miles from the borough, and you are about a 90-minute drive. How will you be able to respond if we need you immediately or soon?
Absolutely. I mean, this is especially prevalent during construction.
Right.
So we understand that there are certain things that come up that are what we consider non-negotiables that do need to have us kind of drop everything and just head up here and address them. So, pending drive time, we do make a point to identify and appreciate when those comments can be addressed in person versus virtually versus just over the phone. Our construction administration team, most notably, is headed by a former superintendent from Roy Kirby Contractor. He was a superintendent for 15 plus years, and we cannot stress enough that we understand and appreciate what it means to have, an emergency that does need to be addressed on the field, and you have a whole crew of people waiting for you, and time is of the essence.
Thank you.
How do you determine who the project management team is that interacts with the borough on a daily basis, the administration? Who are those people? Who would they be?
So the way that we divide up our studios at our office is you're going to be assigned a project manager and a project architect and then a principal. I myself would be the principal. The project manager would be Crystal Remoliotis, who is mentioned with part of our submission. And the project architect, in this case, would be Mike Girding as well. The project architect is, I know this sounds kind of trivial, but they are in charge of the project architecture. And they relay information to our project manager. So our project manager becomes your one singular point of contact and is kind of the face that represents who we are and your one go-to person. So you don't have to worry about tagging 3 different people from our office in anyone's email or saying, oh, I have a question about billing or I have a question about the program. Which one of these people do I call? That project manager is your go-to person.
So Evan, you said in your RFP that education and knowledge would greatly assist in the process of justifying demands and costs associated with this scope to the taxpayers. Can you tell us how you plan to demonstrate the value of the project in ways that are easy for the public to understand and hard to complain about?
So we've done this a couple different ways. I guess the first and foremost way is showing currently the explicit need. That is reviewing how the fire department is, the current station for the fire department, what that looks like, the conditions that are present in there. And then at that point, it becomes a lesson in education. Why those existing conditions are not suitable or not currently or in need of being revamped, and what that does to operations and first responder life and health safety. And we very much look at our job not just as architects who make construction documents and get the building out of the ground, but we look at our job very much as educators. It goes without saying that there will be, as there should, critique and commentary of this project from the public at large. That should be expected, and I think that is appropriate for any taxpayer to have commentary. It's our job to explain why things cost the way they do, why it's going to cost more than just remodeling your bathroom, and where that money is going to, and why it benefits both first responders and the borough at large.
And how is that education decided? Are you at public meetings? Do you hold town halls in association with? How have you managed that?
We would look to you all to cue how you want us to interact with the public. I mean, first and foremost, we are being hired on the borough's behalf. So we are here to administer that in any way that everyone sees fit. If that is being a face at a public input meeting or a public hearing, we are happy to do so. We've also put together PR press releases for different municipalities in the past. I guess at that point, really, it's just a dialogue as to what the design project team at large feels comfortable with and how we project that information as a collective team. I don't want you to think that we just kind of go running, over Facebook and making blind posts or things like that. That's not the case.
I'm going to ask you a budget question here. The borough will expect the selected firm to work closely with her financial advisor to ensure the borough utilizes the most fiscally responsible financing available for the project. Is that something that you are familiar doing? And if so, will be extra costs for you to do that for this project?
So within our proposal, we have included cost estimating services, and the key to cost estimating is making sure it doesn't occur once, right? You want to allocate or identify how much this is going to cost at incremental steps during the design project. So schematic design, design development, incrementally through construction documentation, so there is no shock, right? And it is a constant dialogue back and forth. So when we get our first look at the beginning of schematic design in terms of cost, we're saying, hey, this thing is coming in at this much. Green light, red light. And if it's a red light, then we come back to the drawing board and we talk about what we can do to get this thing under budget or under control cost-wise.
Thank you.
So you talked a little bit about some strategies to keep projects on schedule and on budget. Can you kind of go into what's your mitigation strategy around delays and change orders?
So delays and change orders come at very different circumstances. We'll start with the controllable delays and change orders, and that is any type of possible owner-initiated change orders, right? So say the borough is donated several $1 million, overnight by a wealthy donor to put a pool on the roof of the firehouse. It would be our job then to articulate and work with the contractor to address what those changes are going to look like and the time frame that they're going to occur in and why that needs to happen. In terms of unforeseen conditions, so say like unsuitable soils, bad weather, supply chain issues, our way to mitigate that is to try and identify those with the contractor as soon as possible. At that point, the goal is to be as proactive instead of reactive as one can, and alerting everyone who is part of the design team at large and representative of the borough of why those delays are happening, what's being done about it, where that sits within industry standards and and how those delays are being addressed, and how to move forward.
Thank you.
What do you see as some of the challenges in creating a joint facility for both fire and EMS?
First thing, it's going to come down to culture between those two organizations. In some circumstances, even though those two entities work well out on the field together, we have worked with different agencies or different departments that, I want mine, our two roads never shall pass unless we're going out into the apparatus bay to respond to a call. In other instances, the culture is completely blended. So one of the things that we're going to be interested in looking at is seeing what that existing culture looks like, how both the administration of fire and EMS interact, how hands-on they are together, and then what that also means for the general rank and file as well. And then using that as a cue for space planning and the layout of the building. There certainly can be efficiencies made the more cohesive those two cultures are in terms of shared spaces and such. But at the same time, we want to be respectful for the culture that's in place, and we don't want to make a station where those two organizations are absolutely miserable being in the same roof with one another.
Evan, this is a pretty significant project that the borough's undertaking. This is not a building that we're looking to build and then replace in 20 years. We're talking a 50 to 100-year longevity. What do you look at in regards to sustainability and making sure that this building is ready for now and in the future?
Absolutely. So first things first, it's going to be a risk category 4 building. It's going to be made out of non-combustible heavy-duty materials, right? Masonry, concrete, steel. I say that with respect to, then the focus becomes on the building envelope. One of the kind of internal passions of mine, building envelope and what we call passive energy gains. The fact that if you have a solid and robust insulation and thermal barrier system that just sits there for the next 50 to 100 years, keeping warm air in and cold air in and everything else out of the building from an energy efficiency standpoint. Coupled with that, you will have your mechanical systems that may or will accompany this building. At that point, it becomes a little bit more of a choose your own adventure in terms of what the borough's goals are in terms of both indoor air quality and energy consumption quality, and how those two objectives are met and administered, right? Are we going to address it with solar panels? Are we going to address it with some sort of low frequency heat pump system? These are all open discussions that basically we want to paint a roadmap out for you all to know what your options are, see how that aligns to any of your existing construction standards and basis of the design that you might already be implementing, and then make the best informed decision. And then of course cost also aligns with that. And I think the only caveat we'd have to that is we always approach the use of geothermal with caution in a 24-hour facility, especially with a site that is tight and as compact as yours are. Generally speaking, the recharge wells on those can't necessarily recover because it's the building's fully in use, and you have these really deep wells, which could also probably prove a challenge out here with the soil stratum.
If the borough needed to renegotiate fees based on our borrowing capacity or budgetary restrictions, are you open to that?
Absolutely.
You did mention that the site itself, I assume you've been there and you know what it is.
Yes.
It's pretty blank slate. You do talk in your presentation here about balancing form, function, and aesthetics. Do you have any idea of what you might want something to look like on that particular site, or?
This is actually where we probably shouldn't say this. We get a lot of flack for this. We, in terms of what our imagery looks like, what we want to project, we like to take a cue from the fire department if that's permissible from the borough at large. Obviously, you're going to have your zoning requirements and materiality, but the way that we look at these buildings is whatever agency is going in there, it's their largest branded asset, right? It projects to the community what that department is about and who they are. And, you know, if you put like a giant wavy roof on it, like in Reedy Creek, you know, Disney World, that says like a firehouse in Disney World, right? Versus, you know, something that's like wood clad is like from Scandinavia or something like that. So we very much like to sit, work with both the borough and the department, kind of get a feel for, you know, not only what the immediate context is of the streetscape, but who you guys are as people and how the department wants to project like that, because it will say something, right, to everyone who's passing by, and it's going to say it for 50 plus years.
Thank
You
you.
don't want it to look like, oh gosh, that weird funky glass box with pointy, you know, walls and stuff.
Evan designed, yeah, you don't.
Yeah, it's like, that thing that's clearly a testament to some architect's ego, no, that kind of stuff gives us heartburn.
Thank you.
So that talks about this aesthetics. How would you go about addressing concerns like noise, traffic flow, or access to emergency vehicles in that space that's on a main street and in basically a residential community?
Yes, so we'll start with, I guess, so when we talk about noise and access, that is under the context of the first responders in the facility. Like, so protecting the first responders from noise and making sure that they can go to bed at night. And so from that standpoint, one of the benefits of having a hardened facility is acoustically, it is more resilient than just kind of your standard Marriott hotel construction. The programming of where the living spaces of the firehouse sit is going to play an important role as to how both where the building itself sits on the site and then where those internal living spaces, so the bunk rooms, kitchen, day room, those types of things, we want to make, generally speaking, they are offset from the immediate streetscape. That can be easier said than done sometimes because those same spaces want to compete for direct access into both the PPE gear room and the apparatus bay itself, right? First, you know, response times from those key living and hangout areas in the station is absolutely critical of getting people out the door. Responder access, they're in a site that is it is urban. At that point, it's all going to come down to parking. And what parking means with relative to shift changeover, right? Shift changeover and overlap, where you have the ability to double your parking needs for whatever those 1 hour intervals are. So there needs to be an explicit discussion on how that is managed. And then of course, just general site security, how the site may or may not want to be cordoned off from the rest of the streetscape. We don't want to make it look like a penitentiary by any means with, you know, big chain link fences and stuff, but if you do have security concerns, we want to talk about that and how people buzz in, whether it's through a gate or whatnot, into that part. But once again, that is all a dialogue happening here. And then as far as apparatus responding out onto the street, you know, one of the very immediate conversations that we'd want to have with the borough civil engineer is how we're going to make that happen. Are we going to try to take control of either the lights at the adjacent intersections and have those relayed to, like, say, the watch office or something, or even relayed to the CAD system where you can shut down that intersection and quickly move out? Are we going to be adding some sort of signaling device? And then, most importantly, it's also how the apparatus gets back into the firehouse as well. And that is going to be dependent on how much circulatory room there is on site. I imagine, though, that the return approach is going to look very similar to most urban stations, where you'll probably be backing back into the bay of which you came. That is going to be something that we would try extra hard not to have happen. But on a site that is as compact as that, that's going to be competing with other needs like on-site parking and things like that, that might be one of the caveats that are met. And if you're backing back into the bay, then we want to consider the front apron depth from the immediate firehouse to the curb line, and making sure that the department really can close down that block from a traffic standpoint, because there's nothing more frustrating than watching the fire department try to back in when people are, zooming in and around them and, not paying attention to what's going on.
Thank you. We're coming up to our last 2 or 3 minutes. Council, have any other questions before we ask Evan to give us his highlights on what we may not have pulled out of him?
Just have one quick question. You gave us the timeline for the design, the bidding, the approvals, and then the construction time. How many visits per week would you plan on coming up? Is it a once-a-week visit, a twice-a-week visit, or is it dependent on where you are in the construction process?
Yeah, so that is all dependent on where we are in both the design and the construction process. We definitely like to break the project up into those 2 chunks. We'll start with the more complicated answer. During design, the frequency of how much you would see our team is going to start off very strong. We would want to establish, in a perfect world, reoccurring design meetings with the team at large, just to get it on everybody's schedule. So you know that every second Tuesday at 10 a.m., we're going to be going over something related to design input for the firehouse. From a schematic level, those meetings are going to consist mainly of the building program and what the building exterior is going to look like. And then when we move out of schematic design, that's when we get into the kind of the nitty-gritty stuff. And what I mean by that is it'll be your door hardware review meeting, it'll be your kitchen layout meeting, it will be the equipment, low voltage CAD system meeting where we just, go through every room and start really filling this thing out. But then as it goes into the construction document phase, where our team is just taking all that information that we absorbed over those series of concentrated meetings, we're just kind of running with it at that point and just providing incremental milestone check-ins either through email or virtual call. So to answer your question, from schematic design to design development, in a perfect world, we like to get together approximately every 2 weeks. Sometimes we can go faster than that. We can go faster than that. We generally do not like to, because we've noticed that 2-week time is good gestational time for us to have a dialogue about something, kick back out the response to that, and then you guys can then sit there, think about it, and reflect. We found if we go too fast, it can wash over people, because this is probably, obviously one of many things you all are working on. It's not like you just go to your desk and you're just going to be working on just the firehouse project. So during construction, though, that's a lot easier. We would at that point, they are bi-weekly progress meetings. You would have your pre-construction kickoff meeting, and then from there, it's going to be every other week until substantial completion. At substantial completion, you're going to have your punch list walk meeting, and then a back punch list walk meeting.
Thank you.
Evan, we're at time. Is there anything you want to tell us that we didn't ask that you want to get out?
Other than the fact that I know this might sound a little peculiar, we're in Pennsylvania, multi-prime delivery method here. It does influence how the construction documents and the specifications are developed. At MW Studios, we take a lot of pride in tailoring multi-prime contract packages, is what we call them. So basically, in the front end, we would review with the borough your Division 0 and Division 1. But simultaneously, we will incrementally list out all of the individual specification sections and drawing sheets that each of your prime contractors are going to be responsible for. And we call those the prime contract packages. And where that's really important is if, so you break up plumbing, electrical, mechanical primes, and someone has like a VAV box that is going to a 20 amp disconnect. We will specifically allocate that the electrical prime owns the disconnect, and then the mechanical prime is going to own the factory whip to terminate to the disconnect to the VAV box. Those types of things go a long way in the classic multi-prime finger pointing that happens a lot out on Pennsylvania projects. And it's not just Pennsylvania, it's, Maryland Public School Systems and, NAVFAC and government-related things, but it's something that, I know it sounds a little dorky, but we kind of get into the weeds, and we work directly with you all and whoever's going to be in charge of procurement to let you guys know this is how we're administering it, this is how we're identifying the scopes of work. And
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Our next one up is GKO.
Get this up here.
Everybody still with us?
Yes.
Well, we can do it anyway.
okay. All right, I'll let Mike at the podium.
Spread out. As you're getting set up, I'll just quickly kind of go over what it is that we'll be trying to accomplish. Since we have a very short period of time, what we're going to ask is that you stay focused and succinct in the answers to the questions that we're asking. We don't need you to kind of go regurgitate what you put on paper. We want to pull out some of the highlights of who you are, what is so special about you, and just to answer some of the questions from our key stakeholders.
Okay.
We'll start by introductions, if you don't mind.
My name is Mike Rourke, principal with GKO Architects. My role in the project will be to lead the collaborative design effort, both with the borough and with our consultant team and any other stakeholders the borough would like to be included in the design process.
I'm Kevin Gotchel. I'm a partner at GKO Architects. I would be a facilitator, very involved in programming, very involved in early layout design, but basically keeping the project moving.
Joe Messmer, I'm an associate and project manager, and mainly be involved straight from the beginning all the way through construction until the end.
Allison Klingler, project architect. I'll be involved in the beginning with code analysis and design and going on through construction documentation and consultant and client coordination.
Okay, thank you. Adrian, you want to kick us off with the first question?
Sure. So your RFP was one of the few responses that we received that actually included a rough sketch for the public safety facility. So I'm curious, what process did you go through in order to develop that sketch? Our first responder team has done a lot of due diligence and has like aesthetic and exterior concepts that they want to incorporate in the final design. So like, how would you bring these ideas together?
What we did was simply, with Google Earth, we had an image of the site that we had to scale, and we were looking to get all the site features like visitor parking for the staff, optimally a drive-through, apparatus bay, we find works very, very well. And then to maximize the amount of square footage we thought we could put on there where it was still not taking over the site too much, leaving space to the adjacent buildings and the like. And that brought us to a building of about 22,500 square feet. The area that's in blue on our plan is 2 stories. The rest of the building would be 1 story.
Okay.
And in terms of incorporating your concerns, think of that as an initial sketch. Think of that as an original idea. We are not afraid to break that down and rebuild it, around your ideas and goals. We just needed a starting point.
Thank you.
You all had out of the people who moved to the interview process, you had the longest construction timeline of 22 months was the estimate on here. But you were also the only one that had separately laid out the borough approval process. How confident are you in that, what you saw there in that timeline and how you developed that? Because you were the only ones who did that.
Yeah, we are confident. I think it could be done in less time. We try to anticipate, the equipment and special equipment that comes sometimes towards the end of the project, after the basic construction is complete, before we set like a date when the building would be completely operational. So I think there's a little bit of fluff in there, but it's pretty close.
How do you see merging the two, the fire department and the EMS?
Well, the first step that we would recommend, and I don't know if you noticed, but we have an emergency public safety consultant on our team, Dan Redstone, that the first step would really be doing a programming step with this, where we meet with the fire department, we meet with the EMS people, and of course the borough, and really flesh out what your needs are. And then through that collaborative process, we get a good feel for, how things want to be laid out through those discussions. We're big believers in collaboration.
Speaking of collaboration, who would we be interfacing with, and what would one of these engagements look like? Like a meeting schedule? Can you give us a better idea of what that would look like if we worked with you?
Sure. What we often do is we'll set aside, working with the borough, we'll set aside several days ahead of time, and then as different departments come in that want to be part of that, we set a portion of that day to meet with that group. And then we also are available for public meetings and things like that. So as the group discussions develop into design concepts, we can present those to you.
Your presentation has a heavy emphasis on publicly funded projects, and you also state that you assist in preparing exhibits for grant applications. How successful have you been in helping get grant applications? Because every borough, every municipality is looking for more money somewhere.
Sure. I think we've been successful. Now, we've worked with some very talented people at the municipal level, but for Dublin Public Library, for example, received 2 grants, and they're doing, there was a portion of the building they left unfinished. They just received another grant, I call it a grant and a half, for the new renovations. So that's one example. Warrington Police, we also worked with them and was successful with the RACB grant.
Did you say RACB grant? I'm sorry. Just talk up a little bit.
Sure.
Hear you. Okay. Is there RACB grant?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of strategies you use to keep your projects on schedule, on budget, and then how do you mitigate delays and change orders?
Yeah, we are big believers in proactive value engineering. That means at each step along the way, as the project develops, we're doing cost estimating and evaluating with you the features that are in that building, and any ways that we can make the project as economical as possible. That's one reason we have Boyle Construction on our team. We found we work closely with them for cost estimating, and we found with their input, the cost estimates have been very, very accurate.
And if I could, on the schedule, we'll develop a schedule right up front, the first step of the project. And maybe related to the schedule that we issued, we also understand there's often a little gestation that has to happen in this process. There's presenting information, there's giving a client a chance to think about it, consider it a little bit. There's a chance to make revisions to it. We try to build all that in. So we have, I think, a pretty good understanding of what a reasonable timeline is going to run. So establish that schedule up front, make sure it's realistic, and then just march through and make sure that you're hitting all your set points of that schedule. Try to be very specific with it, even down to the point of your borough council meets on this night, the board packet goes out the weekend before. Try to bake all that in so that we know exactly what pieces we're hitting along the way. And I'll let anybody else speak about change orders, but obviously we understand what a big deal change orders are. So we have what I think is a pretty rigorous quality control program to make sure that we avoid those. And I will like to say that any of the clients that you would contact, the ones that were references or anybody we work for, I think will tell you that we really don't have major change order issues on projects. I think they've all run extremely well. There's really nothing in my mind that I'm embarrassed of over the last 5 years.
And just to kind of go on top of that, and I think one of the reasons why we don't is we do a lot of renovation work as well through school districts and things like that. So seeing that this is a new project, it's fairly straightforward and there shouldn't be any major issues. But the things that we learned in the past, obviously, too, through renovations, the things to look out for, especially when it comes to a site like this.
Joe worked on the renovation of Plymouth Whitemoors High School. And there were 9 phases to get that construction finished, where the students were being moved around. So we have a lot of experience with that.
So when you think about your renovation experience and then building a new building, we're looking to build a building that will last us 50 to 100 years. So in that 50 to 100 years, there's bound to be renovations. How do you think about that when building out the shell, the innards, what could be future efficiencies? How do you go about that?
The first thing I think of with that is future expansion, is thinking about what might be needed in the future. Can we make accommodations to make sure that there's a portion of the site that's available to that, the utilities are available to that the circulation will flow to that? Can we plan on what we can't see today that might be something you want in the future? And we always try to build that future expansion capability into our projects.
How do you all see the relationship functioning between your team and the borough administration? How does that look?
Well, we like to have a very strong collaborative relationship with the township administration, so that I noticed in the RFP you asked to see like a typical monthly report. That's one way that we document and communicate directly with the administration, but also with periodic public meeting updates. And in the design phase, we anticipate there would be representatives from the township that's actually part of the design concept process, along with the fire department and the EMS.
And I really like regular meetings. Just like for the next 3 months, we're going to meet every other Thursday afternoon. It might be a Zoom meeting. If we decide there's nothing to talk about, maybe we don't have that meeting, but I like them on the calendar every 2 weeks. We're going to sit down, we're going to review what we talked about last time, we're going to show you the improvements, we're going to show you the progress. Just have that on the calendar so that we're not constantly scheduling meetings. It's just a every other week update.
Who is the point person for this project out of everyone here? If we were to use you, who is the project manager? What does the team look like?
For the initial concept design stages up through design development, that would be me. Kevin will be very involved in the land development side of it. And then Joe and Allison are working in office to put together the drawings, and Joe will take it through construction. So you'll have several people along the way, but each of us will stay in contact with the project all the way, to be knowledgeable about the project all the way through.
What do you think are the biggest risks you foresee in the design and construction of this particular facility? And then what do you think you would need as strategies to mitigate those?
Well, before I saw the site, I thought environmental issues might be one of the biggest things to consider, but I see you've already demolished the building, and I think I heard that there's been some environmental work already done on the site, knowing that it was an auto dealership and the repairs that would go on in that particular place. I would say one of the biggest challenges is just going to be the construction scheduling. We are in a little bit more dense area, setting up a really good construction staging drawing, so that the contractor, working with the contractors, they're not building over top of themselves, if you know what I mean.
That's actually was going to be one of my questions. Is there any strategies you employ? I'm in contracting, so that contractors working on top of contractors is a nightmare. How do you employ, is there any strategies that you all use to keep contractor A laser focused on this task and contractor B on this one?
Joe, why don't you answer that one?
Sure, and just in regards to this site, and again, the plan that's kind of showed is very preliminary and it's just getting our idea down, but looking at it from a construction standpoint, you have a fairly large footprint. And then you have to think about stormwater. And I think our initial sort of design options were maybe an underground basin, so that would be under your parking lot. But during construction, obviously, that's now taken up by working there. And then looking at this site, I guess it's Harry Street, the A field, I don't know if it's still called that or not. That would be obviously an access that we could use. But we did actually talk about this, is like, we could fit job trailers there. We could probably do a few C boxes for materials and things, but it's like, where do the contractors park, during that? And coming from an area like this, I would be concerned, and I think it's something that maybe meeting eventually with the community, and as this snowballs through the process, talk about the options that we have for that parking area, for the contractors. That would probably be one of my main concerns, is like where those guys would park during this process.
And we include construction staging drawings in our construction documents that have dates associated with them too, so that when the contractor primes are bidding the project, they're aware of that ahead of time.
We've had a project in the past, not a municipal project, but a school district project, where the site was so tight, we actually had to show about a mile down the road. So contractors, part of their bid package, needed to know that they were getting shipped from parking lot to job site, parking lot to job site. So it's things like that we build into the project, and obviously coordinating with, the team, and I would say the community at this point would be very important for this process.
You've done a lot of work with a lot of different municipalities and school districts. What percentage are fire departments or a mixed use, like we're looking at, like a fire and an EMS department, has your firm handled?
We've done 3 pretty recently, including the Upper Providence Central Emergency Services. One reason we have Redstone on the team is that's all he does, is fire stations and police stations. And he does them all over the country. He does the advising on them. So he's particularly important during the programming stage of a firehouse. And we also send our conceptual sketches to him and get his critique along the way as well, and have him involved in the planning meetings virtually.
But, amongst all the things between school districts, libraries, police stations, it might be 5 or 10%.
Okay.
I'm guessing, and that's not scientific, that's just kind of a feeling.
And that work with Redstone's incorporated in your proposal for the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
But I would say 80% of our work is public work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're very familiar with public.
Great.
In those projects, how much community involvement do you have?
It depends on the project. I'll give you an example. The Warrington Police Building, which was a new building, the community was really involved. And part of it was they had a very particular idea. The citizens advisory groups were involved in that with the look of the building. They wanted to fit into Warrington. And so we spent a lot of time working with them. They also had a sustainability, green design committee that we work with closely. So certain projects very involved. Other projects, they're just not necessarily called for that. But we're familiar with it.
But with your project, I could see a town hall meeting, as an opportunity to bring the neighborhood out, to discuss their issues and concerns. It's one of the challenges to this project. Fire stations and residential communities, can be partners, but you got to work on it a little bit. So hearing their input early, incorporating that into the design, trying to address their concerns, I think is an important component for this. We wouldn't do a design charrette that we might do for some facilities, because obviously neighbors aren't firefighters. But a town hall meeting to address their concerns on the outside of the building, I think would be very appropriate.
We're working on a public works building right now for Lower Gwinnett, where we've met with the public works staff in a collaborative meeting, and they were able to put out, whatever ideas they had, and several of their ideas were incorporated into the conceptual designs to date. And another one that comes to mind is the Lower Marion Ardmore Avenue Community Center. They had another citizens advisory group that included not only citizens in the neighborhood, but also from the Planning Commission, and I believe there's a board supervisor member as well on that committee. And we actually worked with them through COVID. So we had an outdoor collaborative work session where we pinned up the designs on a tennis court fence and, worked it through. So we do it a lot.
So you talked a lot about citizens groups and working with the community. You have experts and professionals. The borough has experts and professionals. Can you tell me a time when you may have been working with other groups of experts and professionals that your ideas and outcomes weren't on the same page, and how you worked through that?
Warrington is probably a good example of that, Warrington Police. It took a while to understand a number of groups that we were going to be working with. It wasn't clear from the RFP or the initial meetings. But we are flexible. That's one thing I think about our firm that I really appreciate is being able to take a different path. We actually did a completely different design than what we had submitted, and they had requested a very detailed design submission with our proposal. In the end, what we ended up doing was something very different than we had originally thought we might be doing. And we're okay with that.
I actually kind of look at it like trying to identify the goals of other professionals that I'm working with is kind of one of our jobs, is to understand what they're trying to do, make them understand what we're trying to do, identify those things early and try to support each other in that process. So I don't know that, there's times that things conflict. Sometimes a civil engineer wants to do something that you might not think is very flattering to the building. But yeah, you try to work through it. I guess in that case, if it's a civil engineer and an architect and they're both employed by the municipality, I would go to the municipality, present both sides, and see which direction they think is more important. We will fall in line with that decision. We don't, we're not going to hold out for any value once the decision's been made.
So we're coming up on time. Council, do you have any additional questions you'd like to ask before we ask them to highlight anything?
Since you're located nearby Ambler, do you see that as a plus, that you'd be more available if we need you on an emergency basis?
We do, and in fact, Joe grew up in this community, so he knows the community very well, so he'd be particularly, he's always effective during construction, but I think this project would have a special place for him.
Cool. Joe and Allison, you guys be working together primarily once we get into the construction phase. How many projects have you guys worked on together?
Several.
Over the last few years.
Yeah.
At least 6 or 7 pretty large, like $20+ million projects.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great.
And they'll be working together earlier, too, during the construction documents phase. One of Allison's favorite things is the building code. She is really, really good. Really good with the building code.
Great. So we've asked a lot of questions. Is there anything that we haven't asked that you want to highlight and have us understand about you?
I think between the proposal and what we've talked about tonight, I think we've highlighted things. The collaboration is the main thing. To me, that's what makes great buildings. And as Kevin said, we are flexible. So.
Great. Well, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the work you put into your RFP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Do we want to have a person listed first? How will we run it? A robot's going to show up, right? And then I look live.
All right, Council, this is CBP. We'll ask CBP to come on in and introduce yourselves.
There are mics also on the table so that
We're gonna
we can hear you.
We're going to stay as a team. We're going to stay as a team.
Okay.
If you all don't mind that.
All right, so we'll have you introduce yourselves. We just have a couple ground rules. We're going to ask you to stay focused on the questions that we're asking. You don't have to kind of go back into the whole RFP, who you are, what you do. Just stay focused on the questions. That way we can highlight everything that's special about you and that you want us to know at the end, and we'll take off that way. Is that okay?
Got it. Thank you.
All right, introduce
All right,
yourselves.
I'm going to start with the introductions. So good evening, and thank you all for having us here for this interview. I know our collective interests lie in getting right to your questions, but if I could just make this brief introduction. I'm Eric Layton. I'm one of the partners at CBP Architects. I have with me on my left here Dan Kaiser, an associate in my office, Christina Spangler, our lighting designer, and to my right, Jeff Holstein, our MEP engineer. Dan is a highly valued and regarded project manager with deep experience in managing teams, objectives, budgets, and schedules. It's the exception in our office when we don't have Christina as a lighting designer on the team. And in fact, we just helped them celebrate a 20th anniversary. And Jeff and his colleagues are similarly valued team members of ours with whom we've had relationships that can be counted in decades. A recent project of this team, in fact, is being honored this evening at the Preservation Alliance. I would introduce the structural engineer, the landscape architect, and the cost estimator in the same fashion if they were able to be with us this evening. And I would conclude an introduction by saying, as a longtime chairman of the Zoning Hearing Board in Cheltenham Township and former Planning Commission member, that I'm familiar with the weight of the decision that you are considering this evening and as public officials. So let's delve into your questions and facilitate you making the right one.
Yes, your response specifically referenced your plan to utilize fire technology and space programming to strengthen the first responder community in Conshohocken. Can you please go into more detail about what exactly that means?
Well, so I think that what's important, you're bringing two fire departments that are currently operating separately together, along with the emergency services of the first responders on the ambulance side. And I think what's important is that we get to understand them as we bring them together, because they're going to be spending a lot of time together in that facility. And we know that if properly done, it will foster their existence as a family of first responders. And as far as the technology goes, I just think it's the ability to use the call system. If they're eventually staying overnight, there'll be the alert system that has to wake them when an alarm comes in, and I know that there are some very sensitive requirements for that one because of health issues as a result of a shockingly loud alarm to start. So I think that's how we would use the technology to sort of start to build that community between them.
The project understanding portion of the RFP response, it was extremely detailed, kind of Conshohocken specific. How did you gather that detail, and what did you go through in order to get all of that information?
Well, so we always like to know as much as we can, and that's just before we get selected, before we get started on the job. We want to represent that it's your best interests that we're going to take to heart, and we want to understand fully what we're getting into. So we did some research, any sources we could find online, Montgomery County property records to find the parcel sizes, the existing building sizes, the new parcel sizes. One of the existing fire departments had very clear on their website the apparatus that they house. The other one not so much. So some assumptions had to be made. But the idea was to pull as much information together as we could so that we could fully get our heads around what it is that we were making a proposal for.
You did mention, I think you were the only firm that mentioned the fact that there were 3 separate parcels in this, and one of which is in White Marsh Township. And you did mention there'd be potentially some issues with that. What issues would you foresee?
Well, just being familiar with the basic municipal approval process, we just wanted to make sure that there would be an understanding that because the bulk of the site is in Conshohocken, that there would be a memorandum of understanding, let's say, so that the review happens in the borough and not in White Marsh Township, because that, if it has to happen in both independently, it will double the amount of time. I have no doubt it will double the amount of time. So hopefully it's something that they will collaborate or cooperate on to go forward. I'm going to take this opportunity just to suggest that we do see this as a gateway opportunity for Conshohocken as you're coming into the borough from White Marsh. There's so much happening that's exciting at the bottom of the hill. That's the quieter end of town, but I think it will be an opportunity to make a statement in a civic building that announces that you've crossed the border into the borough.
Exactly. And since, as you mentioned, there was a dilapidated site there, it will be really something to, anything there will be an improvement, but it would be great if it were something really kind of epic.
Yeah, I think it could be exciting, and I think Christina could speak to the effect that even the building and the lighting, well, I should let her say it. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. As the lighting designer, we always get really excited about opportunities when we're making a big difference on a site, especially with exterior lighting. Of course, we have to consider everything that's happening in the neighborhood, and we want to be respectful to the neighbors and the residences and the other businesses, but as Eric mentioned, we see this as an opportunity, both during the day and at night, to just announce that you're entering into Conshohocken.
Thank you.
What does the team look like from you're the guys, let's move forward. Who does the borough interact with on each phase of the process, and who are the leads? What does that look like for the team that's working with you?
So CBP Architects is a firm of about 20 people.
Okay.
I'm one of the two partners there. I will be involved in the project. So my number will be available to you. And then we will assign the project manager. I have Dan with me this evening. In the proposal was also Nicholas Connolly.
Mm-hmm.
He unfortunately couldn't be with us this evening, but he is the project manager in the office who has worked on the last fire station that we designed for the city of Philadelphia. But you will have my interaction, the project manager's interaction, and then the junior staff below them. The associates in our office who are in the project management roles, they're all highly qualified to lead a project like this. And then Holstein White and Beam are similar to us. It's a scale of office where it's a pretty hands-on experience from the partner to the staff that's working on it.
So you have a lot of professionals and experts. We have professionals and experts. How do you work with professionals and experts that are the people you're serving? And what does that look like when there are discrepancies in ideas?
Well, so communication is number one. And, pre-COVID, I would have stood here and said we would have scheduled meetings with a certain frequency. Now we have the ability to communicate electronically, face-to-face. So that certainly improved the relationships. But it's about establishing the relationships, finding out amongst the constituent groups who the key people are, so that they're corralling culling their own ideas that they then would relay to us, so that we're not hearing from every individual. Like we would ask that the fire departments each identify their key spokesperson who would gather the ideas, and then we would work with them. And we would still set up regular virtual or in-person meetings, whatever it takes to get through it all. But yeah, communication is the key. And we have a depth of experience working with not just the client and the user group. So if I took the Chestnut Hill Fire Station as an example, there we had to work with the Civic Association, and then the Chestnut Hill Conservancy on the historic side, and the city, because the building was on the historic register. So there were, and we were able to get all of those folks together the same night, and it occurred over the course of a couple months to just make sure we were hearing and addressing to the greatest degree that we could all of the stakeholder concerns.
And knowing we have consensus at the end.
That's right. That's right.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
And knowing we have consensus at the end of that process.
So your timeline has a 12-month design approval and then a 14-month construction. What does that look like meeting-wise, how frequently you're on site? Kind of walk me through that a little bit.
Well, so as far as being on site for the design process, early on, we'll spend time we just drove by it, the building is raised, right? So there's not a lot to see there. We will rely on surveys. We'll make some early site visits, but then really our regular site visits will be once construction starts. It should be every other week, owner, architect, contractor meeting. During the design process, we probably would also want to set up an every other week meeting with whoever the key stakeholder folks are. As far as the public interface, we probably 2 weeks is probably too frequent. It's probably a once a month kind of thing.
What other similar projects have you all worked on successfully and taken to completion?
So for the city of Philadelphia, we've done 3 different fire stations for them. They tend to, for a while, they tended to build something once every decade, not often enough. The last one was completed in 2022. That was the building in Chestnut Hill. I don't know if you have an opportunity to get over there and check it out. It was in addition to a historic fire station, the oldest continuously operated fire station in the city of Philadelphia, and it stayed open the entire time that the building was, the addition was built, the building was gutted and then renovated. And then prior to that, in 2012, we finished Engine 38, which is over in Tacony along the interstate. It's at like McGee Avenue and forget the name of the cross street, but it sits along the interstate. You can kind of see it along the Amtrak tracks. We did that one, and then prior to that, about a decade and a half prior to that, we did Engine 60 in South Philadelphia on Rittner Street. That's a combination of police station and fire station. And that building, in addition to just the typical apparatus, has hazmat because it's near the airport.
What are some of the strategies you use to keep your projects on schedule, on budget, and then how do you mitigate delays and change orders in your?
Well, I think the strategies that we apply come along with the scale of the firm, right? So we are always looking at where things stand on a schedule basis. I mean, and I could elaborate on the size of the firm by saying we're all working in the same room. So I can look from my desk and see, I can observe what's going on. So I will have hands-on observation of how it's going and be able to raise concerns when we need to make adjustments. And then the project manager will be in a similar role on a more frequent basis. And as far as change orders go, you know, first and foremost, the way to avoid the change orders is to put together the best possible set of documents, the tightest possible specifications and drawings, as coordinated to the greatest degree possible, so that we're not faced with situations where the contractor didn't know what they needed to do. As far as unforeseen conditions, we try to take those and, in some cases, be creative about how to deal with the unforeseen conditions. There may be the need to spend money to address the unforeseen condition, and that may need to come from somewhere else. So we sometimes need to be creative. But you have an empty site, and assuming that the ground investigations are done up front, like the geotech, hazmat, identification and abatement, should be relatively free of unforeseen conditions.
You included pictures in your presentation of the Washington Fire Company, the current Fire Company number 2, and the Norwood Ambulance. Have you had a chance to actually visit any of those sites?
We have not been in any of those buildings, no. No. So again, we did the research. The Conshohocken number 2 has pretty good Facebook, or they either have a web page or Facebook. I don't remember off the top of my head which it was, but we got a lot of information. Like, I have a list of the apparatus based on what's on their website. So that gave me an idea of what is behind those doors. The Washington Fire Company, I could only speculate on what they might have, that it's either something equivalent or close to it.
Right, they will remain there after the other one, and they will be storage for the water rescue, because they're right down on the river.
Right. Well, that's interesting because we were just talking about that.
Yes.
while we were waiting, is the boats getting moved up the hill, hopefully not up the hill from the river. So to hear that it's going to be kept closer to the river,
Right,
that
and
makes sense.
you also stated in your thing that beauty and value are not mutually exclusive. Given that the Washington Fire Company is so beautiful, how are you going to make this one just as beautiful?
Well, I think, again, first we need to learn from the stakeholders where the interests lie.
Right.
It starts with the program. Once we have the program ironed out, then we can, we're not going to come to it with a preconceived notion of what the building needs to look like. We will spend time in the borough, so not just at the site. We will spend time walking around the borough, taking photographs for inspiration, look to other civic projects, like this one, for example, and what has been done in other communities, and find a solution that's going to be unique to Conshohocken Borough. And that, I think, will be the best result for everybody.
Thank you.
So, go ahead, Tina. All right. You mentioned you were 20 people in the shop, smaller shop. Do you view that as a benefit, and if so, why? We've had bigger shops in here that, they're offering different type of services. So how do you view your 20-person shop being an advantage relative to that?
I think we have an advantageous size because it means that I'm going to be seeing on a daily basis. The number of projects that are in the shop at any given time allow me to see what's going on, allow my partner to watch what's going on very closely. In a bigger firm, you may not get that. And then it also allows the project managers to observe what their staff is doing. It's a much more hands-on, close-knit environment, and we have a culture where everybody has everybody's back. And so that, when we have to really push to get something done, for example, we can rely on one another too.
Any projects of this size going concurrently? That would be going at the same time as this, or anything near this size?
There wouldn't be one, there would not, well, I could say right now, there would not be another fire station. We have housing projects going on, some mixed-use projects that are getting set to be documented.
And you feel the way your staff now could support a project of this size
Yes.
concurrently with your other projects?
Yes. Yeah. And we have capacity in the studio to accommodate more workforce.
Okay.
So we can take care of it that way as well.
Okay.
Eric, this is a pretty big and significant project that the borough's undertaking. And this is not something that's going to be done in 20 years and we're going to knock it down and build it again. We're looking at a 50 to 100-year project. What challenges or what are you looking at in order to create what we need now, but yet plan for that 50 or 100 years down the road? What would that look like? Some challenges that you might encounter or things you might anticipate that we might need in the future?
I think the building has to be durable to be able to last that long, which it should. This is a once-in-a-generation or once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that is in front of you. I think it needs to be flexible. So as many opportunities as we have to take what I think will be very specific program requirements, because that's just the nature of the beast, and then to design into it opportunities for flexibility down the road. An example I could offer to you is that when we were working on the last project for the city, since the prior one, the number of female firefighters was growing. And the challenge became, how do you plan the locker room and the shower facilities for a changing, and it's forecast to have an even greater female population on the fire department across the board. And so we suggested to the city, hey, let's do a locker room where it's just your lockers and your stuff, and rather than do the gang toilet and shower rooms, let's do individual single user all in a row off of that locker room, and so somebody really has the ultimate privacy. So in that example, we were able to build flexibility into it so that as the female population increases, we don't have to do any major rearranging. So that's just an example for you.
Going back to an operationalizing, how do you incorporate community-friendly elements while you're still maintaining the security and operational efficiency of a public services facility?
In our experience, we've always known the fire department to be a very approachable public entity. I think that it's not uncommon on a fair weather day, or even when the weather's not so great, to go by and have the doors open. It tends to be, at least our experience with the city has been that they want the kids to come in and learn about what it is that they do. The city does a unique thing still that it doesn't really function the way that it historically did, but they call it the watch room. I don't think the suburban or small borough fire departments would have this, but it's where the person who's receiving the calls coming in from the call center actually still sits, and you could walk by and wave to this person that's behind. So there's that kind of community interaction. But on top of that, the fire stations can also become a place where, in some cases, it's the polling station. And we've designed the training rooms, which might ordinarily, if not used for training, sit dark. We've designed them and located them in the buildings in such a way that they could be open for some public use. Maybe there's, during Fire Prevention Week, they invite people in. Maybe there's a public meeting, for example, that wouldn't fit in this room. Maybe there's a way to have it in, so that you would get more value out of the building than just the fire department.
Council, any additional questions before we ask them to wrap up? Any highlights we might have missed in our questions in the RFP? No. So this is your opportunity to sell us on anything we might have missed in asking you questions or in your RFP. What makes you special?
Well, I think that we are a firm that brings a culture of collaboration to a project. I just want to reinforce that, and we will do everything we can to get to know the stakeholders to the greatest degree possible in order to craft a project. And you might think that, gosh, the more information you gather, the more constraints you might find. But at the end of the day, the more constrained projects are actually, we believe this pretty strongly, they actually turn out to be the richest, most rewarding products at the end of the day. And I think this building that will be a civic statement, a gateway, and acknowledge, I think as the RFP suggested, this is an opportunity to acknowledge what these first responders, put their lives on the line for. So in a way, it would be monumental.
Great.
And I would name it that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks. You got this, girl.
Okay, we got one more. Who are we on to?
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, last firm is Alloy 5 we'll be inviting in. After this, we'll take a little break and then come back. Okay, perfect.
Big break.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Hello.
You can do table or podium.
There are mics on the table as well.
Oh, great. Okay.
What we'll ask is that you give us a quick introduction of who we're talking to. We'll ask that you stick to the question, answering the questions real succinctly. Since we only have a short period of time, we want to make sure we highlight everything that makes you special, and we ask the questions that we think we need to make some decisions. And then we'll give you a couple minutes at the very end if we missed anything that you want to kind of throw out there about yourself. You don't have to regurgitate the whole RFP for us. All right, wonderful. So go ahead and introduce.
Well, thank you. My name is Randy Galliotto. I'm an architect, principal, and co-founder of Alloy 5.
My name is Becco Rusnock. I'm the Director of Development for Alloy 5, and I'll state from the beginning that I am not an architect. I'm not a designer. I was formerly a municipal employee. I worked for the City of Bethlehem in economic development, and then prior to that, I was a journalist. So I bring a unique perspective to the world of architecture.
And my name is Michelle Mazingo. I'm a senior planner and programming manager.
Great, thank you. All right. Adrian, you want to kick us off?
Yes. What specifically got your firm interested in this project and submitting an RFP for it?
Our firm is very much a community-based firm. We practice community architecture. We look for opportunities to make big impacts in communities. We don't necessarily look at opportunities from a building type standpoint. We look at opportunities from a community impact standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, too, that what we look for in projects is things that are familiar to us. We have done a very large amount of public safety buildings. And when I looked at the community of Conshohocken, it really reminded me of home. I mean, I think that's probably something that, serving on a board as you do, I would imagine that you could relate to that. But even just driving around here a little bit, there were so many people out. It's beautiful outside. There are so many people out walking around. And that's familiar to us. And what we want to do is enhance the supply of buildings in communities like that. Take a strong community and help make it stronger.
So I'm originally from Bethlehem.
Oh,
So I
nice.
actually know what you mean by that. That's part of the reason why we live here. But give me some projects. I saw some of the stuff. I'm familiar with some of those projects that you've done. Can you speak to some of the experience with designing facilities like this and what that entailed and what you're proud of and what you've done?
I'll use public safety facilities as a whole. We did the new police station in downtown Easton, which was in a historic district. So we had to come up with a design that worked for the community board, that everyone bought into. We did 2 fire stations for Northampton Township. And we really tied those fire stations to the vernacular architecture of the community, tying in the porch and columns and trying to make what is a large fire station fit into to an area. Is that what you're looking to answer your question?
Yeah, just trying to get an idea of some of your expertise in the projects that similar to this.
Sure, and we share the block with the City of Bethlehem's largest fire station. So we communicate with the firefighters every day. We certainly hear them on calls and appreciate their presence in the community.
What are your thoughts on blending the two together, the firehouse and the AMS?
It's something that we've done before. We're doing it right now for the City of Allentown in their new central fire station. My thoughts on it are they operate a little differently, right? Your EMS probably roam, respond directly from the firehouse, have different equipments, different needs, different storage needs. So we've done that before. I've also designed, I think it is still the largest EMS facility in eastern Pennsylvania, I think 59 vehicles. We merged that with Lehigh County's emergency response team. So they share a facility with the coroner and all of the emergency response equipment. I'd say the big thing there is the drugs and the narcotic storage and keeping those locked down and secure.
So what are some of the considerations that you take into account to ensure that these facilities support both types of services?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. What are some of the considerations that your firm will take into account to support both types, knowing that they have different needs? What are some of the considerations that you would...
Through our process, we would obviously meet with both of them to understand their goals and their needs a little bit better. And from there, we'll look at any common grounds, any common efficiencies. In the past, I'll say that mechanical systems are a little different. I should say electrical systems are a little bit different for each vehicles, door sizes, the amount of square footage they need. So we would look at trying to see how we can accommodate both, but keep the facility as flexible as possible for anything in the future.
If you don't mind, Randy, just to kind of jump on what you're saying there, I think it's important to define the program independently, and then seek ways for there to be commonality. And the analogy I always like to use is, do you need 2 conference rooms? Sometimes the answer is yes, we need 2 conference rooms for operations. Sometimes that answer is no, and then you can look to share. So if Michelle wants to talk a little bit more about like programmatically how we would attack that. I think it starts at the program and defining the needs, really listening. I'll say you're an excellent listener, Michelle, and in our studies, we document what we hear very clearly. We have an enormous focus on communication, and that helps to, down the line, somebody says, well, I thought we were getting 2 conference rooms. Well, it's already documented. Here's the notes that here's what had happened. We decided on this. This is how we'll move forward. But I'll let you kind of talk programmatically.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Becca. So as Randy and Becca alluded to, we'll conduct end user meetings at the beginning of this process, and that's really when our team gets to know your team. We want to make sure that we're all together on the same page in this process. And what we do from day one is what we call the 5 guide, and that's the full installments of visual effects guide. It's going to be our document from start to finish of this project. So when we start that programming process, and as Becca and Randy have talked about, when we talk about the programming and what EMS and fire could share or what needs to be separate for those spaces, what the requirements are for those spaces, we'll track all of that through, and that'll be your project tracking document from programming through construction documents. That way, when you have your project at the beginning and we have those conversations about EMS and fire can share this one conference room, but they need 2 separate training spaces. When we're in construction, and whether it's this team or a different group of people or stakeholders are walking through the facility and we're asking the question, why did we say 1 conference room and 2 separate training spaces? This binder document that we'll have for the group that can also be available digitally will be something that we can refer back to a year ago and say, here's why we came to this conclusion. Our end user meeting specified this, and we have that information available to us.
And, when you're designing anything for the public, over 36 months, a lot of things and people can change. So we try to keep this document available so when someone walks through the final product, they understand why there's 3 refrigerators, in the day room and not 4. And we can look back to it, to the moment where we made that decision. We all had buy-in on it, so everyone understands why it was done that way.
You're, sorry, go ahead.
I said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Your firm's not to exceed fee was the lowest out of everyone who's been brought to the interview phase. Why do you think that is?
I would say that's probably because we did a very similar facility, very similar what we would think is about the same size, and I used that data of what it took effort-wise to develop our fee.
Okay.
We try to avoid using the percentage of construction costs for a fee because architects get the sort of a bad name with making the construction cost higher that increases their fee. So we just looked at the straight data, and that's how we came up with the fee. And nothing better than proof that this is the effort that it took to do this other facility.
How many people are in your company as a whole?
We have 44 people in our company.
Okay, and what would the team look like that's interacting with borough administration throughout the process? What does that team look like?
That team looks about twice the size of what you're seeing here. You'll see the 3 of us. You'll have direct communication with me. I'm a principal doer, so I'll work on the project. We will have a project manager who will work on the project in the office. We also have a construction project manager who will do the same, but also be the on-site representative once the project goes under construction.
A significant portion of what you have done is in that Bethlehem, Allentown area, and you've covered a lot of what you do administratively, but how would you compensate for the distance? I mean, that's a solid 45-minute ride, an hour, depending on traffic. How would you guys handle that kind of through that 36 months?
We do it all the time. We do a significant amount of work for Montgomery County. We're one of their architects of record. We travel up to 4.5 hours. So in Pennsylvania, we go as far west or as far north as Tioga County, as far west as Westmoreland County, as far south down through Delaware.
Great.
So we service that area likely, and we have a lot of work in New Jersey and New York as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
You've included a picture of what the site looked like while the the old buildings are there. Have you been able to tour it now, now that the buildings have been torn down?
I've seen this site with the.
Or you've seen it
Yes.
before? Because you do describe it as well-suited due to size and location.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
do you see any challenges there with the traffic, perhaps?
The site challenge with a facility like this is always that you want drive-through bays, right? And that drives it. So it's going to depend on the equipment that we want to store here is going to really drive how tight that site really is. We're doing some designs for the city of Easton, and they just bought a new tiller truck, and we have to figure out how to adapt the facility to $1.5 million tiller truck. So that's going to be the constraint, is making sure we can get all of that to work with with your equipment and future equipment.
So kind of going off the future, we're looking at this building as a very long-term, once-in-a-generational investment, 50 to 100 years potentially. What are some challenges you see in designing a building for that type of longevity and meeting the needs that we need today, and also 25, 50, 75 years maybe potentially down the road?
That's a great question. Obviously we can't tell the future, but I think what we try to do with design is be smart, look at trends. Oftentimes we can look at trends, and in Pennsylvania, when we're talking about firefighting, all over the Commonwealth, we're seeing this transition between volunteer and professional, and it's like this long-running conversation. People's lives have changed now, where the volunteer fire department used to be able to service a community about this size pretty successfully, but now we're seeing that volunteer base no longer works within the community that it lives in, and that's created a lot of challenges for volunteer departments. So we're seeing some communities try to bring in professionals. Sometimes they're working like a 9-to-5 schedule, sometimes those professionals are on the weekend. There's just a lot happening right now in that space. And what we try to do with our design is, again, we're trying to identify those trends and then anticipate the direction that they're going in. And I think, again, with physical design, you're talking sustainability. We'd want to have the facility open to whatever happens in the future. I personally am not sure that there's electric vehicles in the firefighting world right now, but that could be something that happens down the line. And we'd want, like you said, this is a 100-year facility. This is a long-term investment. We'd want to prepare the facility for those types of changes in the future.
Yeah, and I think keeping the building flexible from an expansion standpoint and also from an interior reconfiguration standpoint is important as well. So while if we want a 100-year construction, I think it's going to be important to accept that and refer back to that constantly throughout the process, because a trend in these types of facilities is to move towards a cheaper superstructure with like a pre-engineered building, because you can put up more square footage for basically the least amount of money. That is not going to last 100 years. So keeping that thought process and understanding that, yeah, you can do this cheaper, but you're giving up a lot of years on the building as well. So I think between all of those and keeping things flexible is a way to adapt in the future.
Great, thank you.
So knowing this site is in a residential part of our community, how do you address concerns related to traffic, noise, access for vehicles, both during construction and then post-construction, fitting into the fabric of the community?
That's a good question, too.
I see this building being built in, I'll call it 2 phases. I think we're going to have a building and we're going to have a lot of asphalt, call it parking, turn space, etc. I think our stormwater management will be underneath the parking lot. I think that's the first thing that should go in so that we can manage stormwater right away. Keep the curbs and gravel area, just gravel, just base course, so that they can, we can park on that and have staging areas. And then once that's done, have the building come out of the ground. I think that's going to be a way to avoid contractors parking on people's lawns and cranes swinging, steel over streets. Try to keep it all compact onto the site. As far as at the end of the day, a fire truck's a fire truck, and the lights are going to go on when there's emergency, and we see it every day. When we're on a Zoom call, I guarantee you're going to hear the fire department in the background. In fact, we did an interview for a fire station project, and when we were interviewing, the sirens actually went off. So I think that is getting the neighborhood buy-in and input in on the project is very important. And we love doing that. And we always say we haven't found a public meeting that we don't enjoy being at, that we don't love being at, because we really do enjoy getting input and feedback from everyone involved in the process. And that includes the neighbors.
So you have professionals, we have administrative staff. Can you give us an example how you interacted in maybe a scenario that the two sides didn't see eye to eye on something, and how you worked through that?
I would say that one of the things that we try to do is this fire station is for you. This isn't my fire station, this isn't the Alloy 5 fire station, it's Conshohocken's fire station. So, and I should say, Public Safety Services Facility. I apologize for that. I misspoke there. But to emphasize my point, we keep that as our focus as professionals, and then we ensure that the rest of the team feels that way. At our kickoff meeting, the first thing that we do for any project is let's learn about you. What are your core values? What's important to this community? What's important to you as the leaders of this community? And then we document that. And so that at every meeting, everyone knows this is what's important to this project. We're all working towards that same goal. We've worked with a variety of contractors, engineers, professionals of all types, and we focus on, we want the experience to be an enjoyable experience. Mutual respect for everyone, keep the focus on the project goals, and get it done on time.
I'll say that when I founded the firm, I purposely didn't put my name on it because I wanted it to be for everybody. Wanted it to be a check your ego at the door place, a place that, you're not working for my legacy, we're working for the greater good of the community, and that's how we work. So we don't really run into situations of conflict. If you do what Becca just mentioned, it's the two most important pieces that are always missed when you start a project. Identify the goals of the project. What are your goals? We have some sort of baseline things that we want to achieve. One goal is to make sure that you make goals. The next goal is to make sure that we all have an understanding of you and your community's core values, so that we can align the end product with that. And I think that when you see mishaps in projects and you walk by buildings and you question things and the community questions things, it's because that's missed. And it's an inclusive process that we document the whole way. So if you're at the grocery store and someone questions you about the fire station, you're going to have that guide that Michelle just explained to you. You can pull it up on your phone. You can search dumpster, and it's going to show you right where the dumpster's at, so your neighbors know how close that dumpster is to their house or whatever the situation is. So very inclusive, transparent process. That's what we practice. And we say we practice communication by design, not so much architecture. And everything we do is communication-based. Here to you, from the table to the neighbors, from our drawings to the contractors, it's all strong. It has to all be strong communication.
So any additional questions? I just have one additional question. So you talked a little bit about you listened to the key stakeholders. How do you manage when there are multiple key stakeholders who might have different objectives? So you might have the elected officials that have an objective, administration that has an objective, and then the end users that are in the building. Mm-hmm. How do you bring all that together to come to consensus?
You don't all get along?
Just asking the question.
I'll use this example, which is why we don't use public safety expert, third-party firm on our team, because that person, from our experience, that person will shut down that collaborative process and conflict starts, because those ideas at the table are met with, that's not what we do, rather than, I think we can make that work and make it better. When we did the Citronia Ambulance Center, we designed with their staff the narcotic storage area. It was something like no other. We really developed a product while we were designing, and it started with, here's a typical locker, and they challenged us, hey, it has to be better. We need chargers. We need all these other things. So we worked through that process and that conflict, that way. The last fire station that we did, the owner hired us. They loved what we designed and how we designed it. They thought, we want you to put this professional on your team to help us through the process. And we got through 2 meetings, and I got the call and said, we can't have that anymore. We need a collaborative process. So, I think keeping an open mind is what we do, really taking everybody's ideas and incorporating them. We're doing a high school, that's my home high school, that my 2 kids go to. And obviously, very near and dear to me, but I hear a lot about it in the community. We hired interns last summer, high school kids, and they spent the summer in our office just helping us understand that building a little bit better. And you start to hear about not what's typical, but the things that you don't really think about, like how they scratch their backpack on the brick because the stairs are too thin, and how it takes them too long to get to the bathroom, and how it's easy to vape in this corner, and all those things. So there's not any bad idea that's going to come to the table that we're going to meet with, absolutely not, we're not going to do that. We really keep it open to everyone. And, at the end of the day, cost of construction is quality times quantity. And it's as simple as that. And a lot of these things that we talk about, they got to get through that cost challenge, right? So we try to do that gracefully, as delicate as we can, because some ideas just can't happen because of cost. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we have 2 minutes left. What do you have to tell us about your company that we might not have teased out here in the questions or from the RFP that makes you shine and makes us want to select you?
Everybody gets 30 seconds.
I'll say my background brings a really unique perspective that I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somewhere else. I keep very good contacts with local representatives in the Lehigh Valley who also have very good contacts with representatives in Montgomery County in your area. We are very good at helping navigate the grant process and the kind of politics around the grant process, especially at the state level. It has helped us in the past to have kind of our representatives, maybe have a phone call with your representatives and push to support different things like the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program, which is it's a very popular program to help fund municipal projects like this one. And then I think we're good at helping you communicate out to the community. Randy really hit the nail on the head by talking about communication by design. That's not a slogan for our office, that's our ethos. We all practice that down to the intern level. Everybody focuses on how we're communicating and making sure that the communication is clear. And the understanding that what we communicate to you turn around and have to communicate to a huge group of people, right? Your staff and your team, all of your neighbors, and we're very aware of that from the beginning.
I'll say the last 5 public safety projects that we did, 5 or 6 were RACP projects. And while we all think everything in Harrisburg happens based on merit, it's really not the case. And it takes a lot of effort to get things done. And whether we're working in Montour County or here or our community, we're able to put a little extra muscle in for you to help these projects through. Michelle?
I'm ending
like 10
this.
seconds.
I guess I'll take a slightly more sentimental note here and say that when we talk about the duration of this project, it's not a short time frame. And we talked about the team that we're going to bring to the table. And what I want to express to this group is that that team's going to be consistent from start to finish. I came to Alloy 5 as a 24-year-old, moved to the Lehigh Valley. I've been here for 8 years now. I'm 32, married with 2 kids. And that's what this office brings to us, and that's the team that Mike and Randy are. Mike is our other co-founder. have created here. We create strong, long-lasting teams. You won't see the transition or people coming on and off. We create the same group of people you see at the table day one, same group of people at the end of the project. And we hope to see everyone on your end at day one and at the end. That's always our goal, but we want to create that consistency for your team to have from start to finish.
Yeah, and I'll say that what we do is very serious business in communities, but we make it fun. And I think that's a very important aspect of this is getting everyone at the table, wanting to come to the table to work on the project. And we love doing that.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
So going back to the fee that was generated, you stated that it was based off of similar work and the content that was put into that. So what was the scope of that project? What was the square footage?
It was a 29,000 square foot, 12 bay. It's a little complicated. There's smaller bays and larger bays, but public safety facility with large apparatus, small apparatus, living quarters, I want to say 12 bunks, offices, just, it's a large.
That fee that you submitted
That was, I mean,
based off of 29,000.
I use that as the guide to develop your fee. Yeah. And it's through construction.
Through construction. And just to clarify again, who on the team is handling construction management through the process?
So I will always be there.
Will be on site.
Well,
How does that mean by be there?
so we will have bi-weekly construction meetings. Yeah, I will be at not probably every one of those meetings, but Chris Hoffer or Joe Balsamo will be there consistently.
So members
From our firm,
team
yeah.
firm will be there on site serving as that representative.
Correct. And Joe Balsamo is a seasoned vet who has done every public safety facility we've done, he has been part of. He has an excellent track record. And I should have mentioned, he also does our quality control. So not only is he doing the quality control and the drawings, he's overseeing the construction on that.
So his quality control was design portion of it and then on site.
Yeah, we have an excellent track record for public projects and change orders.
Anything else, Steph? Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Appreciate you coming in. All right, we are taking a 5-minute, 7-minute bio break. Thank you.
What are we doing?
All right, we got the thumbs up. Calling the meeting back to order and reconvening on our regular agenda items. First item, we have nothing under land use, public hearings, and ordinances to discuss this evening, ladies?
Correct.
Okay, no specific council business for this evening, so let's go right into manager matters. So the first item under manager matters is to consider recommending to the zoning hearing board that an extension to 701 Fayette Street Project be granted for a maximum of 6 months. I'm going to turn this over to our solicitor to review this letter.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is an application that you are all familiar with. It was originally approved on December 2nd, 2021. In 2023, the relief that was granted to permit, it's the mixed-use building at 701 Fayette Street. The relief granted to permit that construction was extended in 2023. Obviously, at that point, we were coming out of COVID, and we had a few projects that had been delayed. That extension was actually given for 2 years through June 22nd, 2025. Since that time, you all have adopted the Fayette Street Corridor Overlay District Ordinance, which covers 701 Fayette Street. So there has been a request for another extension. The recommendation, I think, from administration, your professionals, is that if that extension is granted, it should be limited to a period of 6 months to try to force that project forward to get it off the ground. Other projects that stalled during that time period have all been started and most completed at this point. So this particular project has stalled completely. So the letter that I drafted that would be sent on your behalf lays out the history that I just gave to you, and then respectfully requests that the zoning hearing board limit the extension to December 31st, 2025.
How many times can they do an extension, Mike? As many as they want?
Well, I mean, frankly, it's until the zoning hearing board says no. When you are requesting an extension, you're required to show good cause and show some change in circumstances. Certainly, back in 2023, things were difficult. Those circumstances have changed now. So to answer your question, you certainly can see extension after extension after extension. This particular one now being extended 2 years out, and it will be 2.5 years out. No, 2021, so 4 years out. That's the longest extension I'm aware of that has ever been granted in this borough.
Thank you.
Sure.
So to be clear, we're just making a recommendation. They can
Correct.
well give them a 2-year extension.
The zoning hearing board could. That's exactly correct.
Or none at all.
Or none at all. Correct.
So may I ask just a procedural question? With the overlay district being put in place, because they didn't actually move their project along, do they now have to adhere to what the new zoning regs are in that district?
From a zoning standpoint, they can operate under this decision if it's extended. So they would not have to operate under the overlay regs, because keep in mind you have to opt into the overlay. It's a positive for developers. So they would continue to operate under the underlying zoning pursuant to this decision. They could always, even with this approval, decide, hey, we want to take advantage of the FCO at any time.
So we're not adding any additional difficulties based on our process of land development to this project?
No.
Okay.
So anytime in the past 4 years, they could have just moved forward. They just, for whatever reason, it's on them, not on us.
It is 100% on them at this point, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council, any additional questions? No. Hearing no additional questions, do we have a motion to recommend to the zoning hearing board the extension to the 710 Fayette Street project granted for a maximum of 6 months?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
I will send a letter tomorrow.
Thank you.
Point of 701, not 710.
7:01, dyslexic.
Did I just say that incorrectly? But
I did,
okay.
dyslexia.
And I think, I'll make sure the letter is correct, though, because that's also, it's an easy mistake to make.
Thank you
so
for pointing that out, Madam Vice President.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is to discuss the special event request for a block party on the 400 block of East 9th Avenue. Steph, I think you have the details. This is probably the same one that we do.
It is.
Okay.
It's an annual event.
It
They're
gets bigger and
requesting-
bigger
it
each
keeps
year.
getting bigger, more successful, and more fun.
Exactly.
Yes, yep. But it's the 400 block of East 9th. It is Saturday, September 6th, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. There's points of contact. They've actually already provided their certificate of insurance. So again, annual event. It has been reviewed by Public Services, Fire, Police, with no concerns, especially since it's been such a success in the past.
Okay, any questions on the party? All right, we don't need to vote on this.
No, it's on your agenda for discussion, and then it'll be back on your voting meeting agenda for consideration for approval.
Okay, great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a discussion on a resolution extending temporary traffic and parking regs in the Borough of Conshohocken. Steph, do you want to?
Yes, in April, we passed a resolution that allowed for temporary traffic and parking regulations that consisted of two 15-minute to-go parking spaces on East 2nd Avenue in the area of Tony and Joe's, and also a stop sign at West 2nd Avenue and Forest Street. So they've been in an evaluation period. We've had no issues with these two requests and no operating issues or concerns that have been presented to us from the community. We will be extending them, requesting that they be extended for another 90 days. And after that point, if there is still no issues, then we would work towards formalizing them in an ordinance, which would require the whole ordinance amendment process, which will take time. So there may be an additional extension, but that's just because we're waiting for the resolution items to get caught up with the ordinance process.
So we will have had the pilot program then in place for 6 months, where we've then evaluated through multiple seasons and changes in borough flow and.
Yes, so this is specific to these two items, and then we also have the the 2nd Avenue one-way directional, which is an additional item on the agenda, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Okay.
But yes, the idea is, the concept is, you put in temporary stipulations. They are evaluated during specific points throughout the course of a fiscal year, so you see the effect at different times of the year because the borough operates differently throughout different seasons. If it's needed, then you have professionals that are evaluated, and then we bring them to council's attention as to make them permanent.
Okay, any questions related to extending the temporary traffic and parking regs? All right, no votes required for this evening. Next item on the agenda is a discussion on proposals received for bond counsel and financial advisory services that are related to the Public Safety Services Facility Project. Staff, you want to review our results of your RFP
Yes.
process?
So we did put out an RFP for architectural design services, which we just completed all those firm interviews. And then a month later, we put out an RFP for the bond counsel and municipal financial advisor services. That will be part of all one team that's going to work together along with our engineer and administration and our first responders to work on the public safety services facility. The bond counsel and municipal financial services RFP, we got 4 responses. 4 proposals that were responsive to that RFP. We reviewed each of the RFP responses based off of firm location specifications of the RFP, whether they were met or not, if they tailored the response to the borough, the cost, the expertise, the approach, the project timelines, team structure references, and then of course added our own administrative review comments. After review of the 4 RFP responses, we removed 2 of the responses because they did not meet the specifications of the RFP. The RFP specifically asked for bond counsel to submit
and provide the borough with their proposal in terms of their team, which would include a financial advisor and any other services they needed to carry out what the borough is going to need in order to actually take out debt for this project. And 2 of the RFP responses, which were Kutak Rock and Lamb Mecker Lane, only consisted of bond counsel. So we weren't able to evaluate any of the other services that we would need in order to bring this project to fruition. One firm did say that they would provide a recommendation for a financial advisor if we wanted one. That's not responsive to the RFP. And then another firm made a recommendation on a financial advisor, but they did not include any supporting information like who their team contact or costs that would be associated with that, and therefore they were removed as well from consideration. So there are 2 teams and firms that are in front of Borough Council for consideration. There is Clark Hill, which would be your bond counsel. They would be teaming up with NW Financial Group, LLC, and they would serve as the financial advisor. And then the other entity that was responsive to the RFP was Obermeyer, which would serve as your bond counsel, PFM, which would serve as your financial advisor, and they actually also included RBC Capital Markets, which would serve as the underwriter. They went a step further than Clark Hill in terms of presenting who the underwriter for the actual bonds, notes, debt would actually be. Understanding that the underwriter has its own separate interests that would be different than the boroughs in this instance, because they would be underwriting the debt and we would be taking on the debt. But it was interesting to see that extra factor added to the proposal. Both of the firms came in relatively similar when it came to price. Clark Hill came in around $35,000 to $50,000, depending on what the final version of that debt ends up being. And Northwest Financial came in, again, around that $15,500 to $25,000, again, payable at closing. Obermeyer came in around $30,000, so slightly lower than Clark Hill. And PFM came in slightly higher than NW Financial at $24,500 to $30,000, again, paid out of closing. And then because they included our RBC, you could see what that cost would be associated in terms of fee, depending on what that final bond issue was going to be. So those are the 2 firms that are in front of you that are responsive to your RFP for bond counsel and municipal financial advisor. Again, with the understanding that the borough has not only the public safety services facility project that we are working on, but we also have probably in excess of 7 other major capital projects that we'll be evaluating during this same time period. And the idea to have that financial advisor in addition to the bond counsel was to be able to strategically and creatively evaluate what the best options are for the borough while maintaining our financial integrity that we've so carefully and strategically built that we currently have, and how best to fund and bring all of those very exciting initiatives to fruition. So it's a whole puzzle piece, I like to say. The Public Safety Services Facility is the main component of all of this, but we're not going to look at anything in a vacuum. We're going to see everything that is important to our borough, everything that all of our constituents have stated, whether that be parks, playgrounds, roads, infrastructure, safety, our fire services, our first responders, et cetera. The list goes on and on and on. So in an ideal world, what would we fund? How would we fund it? And what outside of the box thinking can we do financially in order to meet all those objectives and goals? So we've reviewed from an administrative perspective the 2 responses in depth. We've done our due diligence in terms of experience with similar projects, the approach that was presented, how the RFP was actually compiled, understanding that that's the type of work that we will be receiving throughout the process,
We've looked at the references, again, the team structure and project timelines that they've presented for this type of proposal. And we are prepared from an administrative perspective to make a recommendation on how we believe what would be in the best interest of the borough for this particular project based off the responses that we received. I would ask that council just discuss how they want to proceed moving forward, specifically with this RFP, and what direction you'd like to give me in terms of what you would like to do next, steps to select your bond counsel and your financial advisor.
So does council have anything that they want to talk about on how we want to move forward? This, just from raw numbers that Stephanie called out, is about $100,000 investment-ish in total that will set us up from a strategic planning perspective, which then will complement the new comprehensive plan that will need to be developed. Do we want to follow the interview process, or do we feel that we have enough information from those two that we can make a decision without an interview process?
So I have a question. So you talked about these 7 other major projects that we have coming up, and using the financial planning piece of this with that as well in totality. Is that something that was included in the RFP? Do they understand that, or do they think it's just focused in on the emergency management building?
So the financial portion of it, the RFP was focused specifically on the public safety services facility, but there was a caveat in the RFP that indicated that that financing structure would have to fit into the overall financing structure of the borough. And therefore, if there are other capital improvement projects that need, I'm not going to be asking them to find funding strategies specifically, but how are we funding the public safety service facility, understanding that those other initiatives also need to be taken into and factored into what our borrowing capabilities are. Should we be borrowing money now? Should we be borrowing money later? Should we be utilizing certain amounts of reserves? Should we be investing certain amount of reserves differently? The big picture will ultimately affect how we fund what's available to us for the public safety services facility.
Right.
And you can't do that if you're not factoring in everything else that's taking place.
Did both firms address that in their RFPs?
They addressed the amount of money it would take for consulting. And that consulting is what we'd be looking at specifically in terms of how do you look at the bigger picture and find out how this project fits into that bigger picture.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who will be interfacing with these people the most on the administrative side?
That would be me.
Okay.
I will be, and our finance team, mostly because we have a lot of funds, and we have a lot of accounts, and we have certain obligations as well. So this isn't just how much money do we have currently, how do we best spend it? It's what reserves do we have built up? What is our borrowing capability? But what liabilities do we also have that aren't just 1 year down the road, but 20 years down the road? And how does this decision affect those liabilities? Things like OPEB and pensions and contracts. We can't make decisions, again, that are going to negatively affect our current obligations. And therefore, those particular individuals that work on those things every day are going to be interfacing with these individuals directly.
So one of these groups you've worked with, the other one you haven't closely, is that?
Currently PFM works directly with us for our pension plans. And so they are aware of they're aware of how we do business.
Okay, and you've been satisfied with their interaction with the administration?
With PFM,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And they have actually done a fantastic job of taking control of our fire and police pension plan and bringing them up to a standard
from a state perspective in terms of distress level. So they've done a great job of managing those those particular investments for us on our behalf.
Okay.
Any additional?
There are other financial advisors that we have worked with did not respond to this RFP.
Sure.
So there are other entities that have done really good work for the borough in the past, but they were not responsive to the RFP. We potentially will use them for other projects. But again, I'm not looking for, we just went through almost an hour and a half of interviews, or longer than that, 2 hours of interviews. We're looking for a partner who's going to be able to manage the area of responsibility that we have given them. We do not need to be hand-holding. We don't have time to hand-hold. And therefore, who's the expert in that specific area? And that's what we're looking for.
And we've worked with Obermeyer.
We have worked with Obermeyer before. Obermeyer did serve on our behalf on the acquisition of that property that the Public Safety Services will go on. They are also working with us. They worked on the acquisition, some tax issues that came along with the acquisition. So their team is familiar with the project and familiar with the importance that this project plays into the overall borough plan, comprehensive plan, and the next comprehensive plan, which it's right around the corner.
Any other questions? Do we want to make a recommendation?
We're, for this evening, again, we are looking if there's any feedback over the next 2 weeks, but from our purposes in terms of planning, I just need to know if administration is saying, from our evaluation of the RFP response, we think there's a clear front runner. Do you still want to bring both in? That's totally fine. That's completely up to you. But that's really the direction that I need this evening.
I would say no.
I would say no
as well.
I agree.
Okay, so you have a front runner.
I have a front runner. What we'll do then is we will take the next 2 weeks to gather any feedback that we get from the community, and then we will put it on the agenda at the second meeting in June, and hopefully get a bunch of our team members for this project on board. It's exciting. Thank you.
I do just want to point out that one of the things that we've done very well with our administrative team and council over the last 8 years, it's been a little bit longer than that, but over the last 8 years, is the strategic vision of where we're going to set the stage for the future of Conshohocken. So there's a lot of expertise and a lot of thought and energy going into the strategy for the future and not just acting on what's happening today. So thank you to all of you for doing that. All right, no vote. We will have the information for the upcoming meeting. Next item on our agenda tonight, discussion on naming the Pocket Park on Fayette Street between 6th and 7th Avenues. And we'd like to have a discussion about naming that after Council Member Barton in recognition of her 13 and a half years of service to our Conshohocken community. So Steph, do you want to discuss that plan?
Yes, so first I will apologize for the typo that was on the agenda. It is definitely between 6th and 7th, so apologize for that. But yes, Ms. Barton, our senior council member, has been serving the Borough of Conshohocken. I'm saying 13 and a half years because that is specific to Borough Council, but prior to that, you served in a multitude of other factors, Planning Commission, I don't know, you planning.
For 7 years.
Yes. So that's another 7 years. So it's over basically 20 years of service to the Borough of Conshohocken, which is a huge commitment and something that should be commended. And so I know that you were giving me a hard time about doing this stuff early, but I had to put some things in place just to make sure we could get proper approvals and do it right for you in honor of your service. So what we did put in a pocket park between 6th and 7th. That pocket park is right next to the Conshohocken United Methodist Church. Anita has also dedicated a lot of time and effort to the community at that church as well. And therefore, we thought it was a nice way to recognize you and your legacy by basically placing you where you always are for eternity. No, I'm kidding. But that is the concept, and we're discussing it this evening. And if there is, no objections to that concept, then we'd like to approve it, and then to have a nice little ceremony where we unveil that naming of that pocket park in your honor, because you deserve it. And then we'll go have some fun in August before you close out your last quarter serving as Borough Council, our senior council member. That's the plan.
Okay, I'm on.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions or discussions around that we want to do? So go ahead, Steph, keep planning.
Okay, great. So we'll keep moving forward. Again, it'll be on your agenda at the voting meeting in June. If there's any community feedback before then, we'll bring it back to your attention, and we'll keep going.
Excellent.
Okay?
I guess it would look weird if I voted on that, huh?
Yeah, you're going to have to recuse yourself on that one. We'll make sure we bring the recusal form.
Oh, okay, thank you. You heard that.
We did. All right. Next item on our agenda, consider approving 203 East 12th Avenue Financial Security Escrow Release Number 2 in the amount of $40,887.06. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is to consider approving change order number 2 for the traffic signal modernization project along East and West Elm Streets. So, let's see here. I'm going to call out all of the changes, and then I'll ask for a motion. Is that appropriate? Yes. Okay. So the first one is East Elm Street and Harry Street traffic signal modernization, which results in an increase of the contract in the amount of $55,803.10. The second change is West Elm Street and Caldwell Lane traffic signal, and the modernization project, which will result in an increase of the contract by the amount of $15,314.93. The third item is the West Elm Street and Maple Street traffic signal modernization, which results in an increase of the contract amount by $11,954.10. And then the fourth item is the West Elm Street and Oak Street traffic signal modernization, which results in an increase of the contract in the amount of $16,941.35. So I'm looking for motions to approve change order number 2 for these 4 items.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is to consider approving payment application number 5 for the traffic signal modernization project along East and West Elm Streets. Again, I will call out the payments that we're approving and then look for a motion. So the first item is East Elm and Harry Street for an amount of $254,084.85. The second item is West Elm and Caldwell at $183,232.88. Next item is West Elm and Maple at a cost of $179,237.17. And then lastly, West Elm and Oak at a cost of $122,307.95. Do I have a motion to approve those 4 items?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is to consider approving Resolution 2025-15, and this is authorizing the creation of a checking account for our borough's road fund. So we talked about beginning to create a fund for our road programs as we move forward to be able to put dollars in to fund the projects rather than just relying on our liquid fuels that we're using currently. So with that information, are there any questions? Hearing no questions, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2025-15 that will authorize the creation of a checking account for the Borough Roads Fund?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is under Department Matters. So we are going to look at discussing a resolution that will extend the temporary one-way traffic regulations on East 2nd Avenue. So Steph, would you mind going through the extension and the expectations?
Yes, so how did we get here? We basically identified certain safety concerns for both pedestrian and vehicular traffic at the intersection of Fayette and East 2nd Avenue. We recommended a trial period of one-way traffic. We presented those concerns and recommendations at a public meeting in November of 2024. The temporary trial period was implemented on March 1st of 2025. In order to accurately capture seasonal fluctuations in traffic volumes and patterns, we want to extend that temporary resolution until October of 2025. That would be an additional 90 days from the July 5th end date of this trial period. So that will have gotten us through spring, summer, and early fall. We may be asking for one additional extension just to evaluate, late fall, early winter, but we'll see where we get as we lead up to September, the September timeframe. So what we will be doing, we did speak with our traffic engineer earlier this month, and his plan is to come in at the September work session to provide results and recommendations over that 8 to 9 month evaluation period. Again, that will kind of be an opportunity for council or the public to ask Brian Keaveney from Pannoni, who's the traffic engineer, any questions or concerns related to safety, turning radiuses, all that fun stuff that he's going to present in terms of rationale as to why administration recommended the study and kind of results that have generated from evaluating how this one-way traffic pattern is going. We have received some concerns or complaints from a limited number of constituents. We've worked directly with St. Matt's School, just in terms of kind of concerns that some of their parents had with drop-off pickup. So we are working through those nuances. We are documenting those items. We're doing our own internal evaluations, both from an emergency management perspective and a police perspective. So the plan is to request the council extend the temporary configuration for an additional 90 days from that July 5th date. And then we'll be back in front of you in that September timeframe to kind of provide additional information as we move into either to decision-making time. So that is the plan. And if you're comfortable with that plan, then we are not voting on it this evening. Again, it'll be back on your voting agenda. But if you have any questions that you want to ask now, we have Ray and Dave here. Brian's not here, but he'll be back in September.
Council, have any questions related to this plan?
What, just so I know, and I didn't ask this initially, what is our metric for success here? So whenever we evaluate changing something from a business end or community end, no matter what it is, what are we measuring to improve? Is there a direct KPI almost that we're trying to look at to improve either people's lives or situation safety-wise?
Yeah, part of this is there's a We might go in the macro. So the macro part of it is looking at the entire project situation on the lower end, and being able to move parts around that area in a high volume time frame without causing any concern to the end. So number, Second Avenue and Fayette Street has always been a concern and attraction for everybody. We now have a new restaurant that is open there. They are utilizing parking spaces across the street, and there's going to be more pedestrian traffic there. We unfortunately weren't able to get a grant for the next starting yet. That's going to be in the process. The hope was that that process would be in play. That's part of this, but it's not. So that's the macro. The micro is that's indeed that's there. So no matter what anybody is trying to sell, I personally have sat down there for hours at a time and watched the situation. Things are delivered there. And kids are walking in between cars from school, across the street, in between tractor trailers. I witnessed a T-bone accident coming out of 7th Avenue onto Fayette Street just before we made the turn, just before we made the change. I understand that there's certain people that don't like this situation because it affects, they believe it affects them. And if that's the case, they can certainly make that argument, but there's been nothing to indicate that this is causing any issues to any of the businesses down there. Nothing. It's been smoother as far as being able to move vehicles around that area. It is not gotten any better, it's gotten much worse as far as how tight that is. You see the hours of the weather, so confident there. And adding the fact that you have an elementary or daycare that
Yes.
comes out 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, big Steve. So it's parking, safety issue, the fact that we can look at improving the entire Second Avenue corridor, removing things that probably should have never been put there, islands, reduction in parking because of islands, reduction in movement around that area because of islands. Different storm sewer situations there that we have our engineer has no idea, no one has any idea why they were in there in the first place. It's looking at an area that some people simply don't want to select because they've been have businesses there for years and they think that is just an area that we shouldn't.
Yeah, I get that. I've heard from non-business owners that there was some aggravation about it as well. My question more was, if we're talking about, I get the logic behind it. Do we have data on like how many cars are moving through there from a volume end prior to this versus now?
I have the data.
Okay.
I got the data prior to it. We were having data. We had it set. We also set up counters when we changed the route.
Okay.
But we're talking. Remember what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Talking about small one block area. The amount of cars going back and forth in a small one block area is not what we're talking. We're not talking about volume as a totality. We're talking about numerous businesses moving cars around, mixing in with people who are trying to use the restaurants, a school up the street, people who are just basically walking down the sidewalk, cars going out onto Fayette Street. It's not just one aspect of it. We could put counters on Elm Street to see what the volume is and understand that we might have to make changes on Elm Street. But doing that on Second Avenue isn't going to get what I think we might be looking at. We're not trying to change the direction of the traffic there because of volume. We're trying to change it because of safety and the ability for us to have a more appropriate way to get vehicles around into areas that we don't have to park. We have cars that back up, go out to Second Avenue, and are looking for parking spaces, make the left-hand turn on the right-hand turn. It has been a problem for a lot of years. Businesses that are inside their stores and don't see what's think that through the engineering portion of it, which Ron will talk about, and the other things, that it can be better. But there were things that were done there that we can't improve. I don't know why they put out the islands out as far as they did. At the time, the volume of traffic on Fayette Street might have not warranted these kind of, or allowed for these kind of things. It would now. Things have changed down there substantially. And it is only, we had the opportunity, like I have, to sit there and watch what goes on there. It's cringe. Cringe at the fact that people are walking in between cars, coming down the hill. And that's with Second Avenue on the west side. Out of the picture. And that was part of the picture. So that's the idea behind it. It's our responsibility that when we see something that we think is a safety issue, to bring it to the attention of the people that we need to bring it into the attention. If at some point the decision is not to do that, then we've done our part. This is our part. The police department has put officers there to make sure cars don't go in the wrong direction, even though the business owners have been telling some of their customers, don't worry about it. That's coming from people who've been stopped. So cooperation needs to happen. It's happening now. If you go down there, it's much different now than it was a month ago when this was happening. It's a smoother operation. People are getting to understand what's going on there. Part of the Second Avenue project was to put the to-go parking spaces for Tony Joe's Pizza. That's worked out well. And we might make those permanent, and we will put them into an angle to make it easier for traffic to flow in that area. And the hope is to not only have improvement for the people that are going to the restaurants, but also for the people who work there, and the kids that are walking there, the parents who are walking their kids up and down Fayette Street, the people that are crossing. That's the hope. There's nothing, there's no other, honestly, there's really no other incentive for municipalities.
Ray, have we gotten any new parking signs, directionals?
There's parking signs, for directional parking signs are going to be changed in color from green to blue. And they're going to have arrows on them, they're going to show exactly where to go.
Are they going to be bigger?
That blue is going to, we just got them in the other day. So they're going to start putting them up and we're going to start seeing them. That's going to give us a summertime vision of what hopefully will be better parking spots. And we also, Paul is developing an app right now, as we speak, to allow people to click on a location and be able to find parking in that area. So he's doing that. That should be done within the next month. He's working with some people at Wilson. That's the idea. We're not a little municipality.
Nope.
It's kind of a city block at certain times of the day. We noticed it, let's do something about it. Everybody's not happy about it. If we need to change it, we'll change it. Nothing is there, so everybody knows it's permanent. Everything is well good.
And just for clarification to anyone watching this, Paul is our communications and events manager who's working on the app?
He is our communications and special events manager, and he is behind the scenes doing everything from website to things like this new parking app to newsletter that gets mailed out. He coordinates and runs every single special event that we have in the borough, from coordinating everything for the St. Patrick's Parade down to the Halloween costume parade, which is one of the best family events that we have. He works collaboratively with the mayor on his car show and arts festival. Great member of our team.
I just wanted to call that out because some of the members of our team aren't necessarily in the forefront of our meetings or our operations. So
He's actually right now in the production studio. So yes, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that not everybody sees every day. And everything happens so fast that we can't always give everybody credit and highlight everybody. But this happens, this room happens, website happens, all that fun stuff happens because of Paul.
Great, thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dave or Ray related to the temporary one-way traffic regs? All right, there's no vote today, but it'll be on our agenda in the near future?
That's correct. It'll be on your agenda at the voting meeting in June.
Great. Next item on the agenda is legal matters. It looks like we do not have anything for Mike today. And we will move right into council member and mayor matters. So we'll turn the microphone over to our Mayor Aronson to go over all the great things that have happened in the last 2 weeks.
All right, thank you. So we had our local VFW did 10 ceremonies around the colonial area for Memorial Day, culminating at our monument here on Spring Mill Ave in Conshohocken. So thank you to them. Thank you to everyone that came out and supported all the veterans that were with us. And then actually our congressperson, Madeline Dean, stopped by afterwards to hang out at the VFW, so that was really nice. We also have the Arts Festival at the moment happening on Saturday. If that changes, we will let everyone know tomorrow, but we are very, very much looking forward to putting it on and to being out there with the community and, of course, showing off our awesome 2025 shirts. And then finally, we announced our sprinkler nights coming up for the summer. And just a reminder to everyone that they sort of cycle through our different parks, so make sure to pay attention to that. And then I believe the Marywood Park Sprinkler Night is attached to our concert in the park, so you can come and it'll be like a children's geared singer to go along with the Sprinkler Night, so it should be a lot of fun. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Ralph? Stacy?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Kathleen?
Nothing, although I am disappointed that Ralph did not talk about the Kaboom Kid.
Oh yeah, Kaboom Kid.
They did actually, thank you for that. The Kaboom Kid raffle launched, so feel free to enter your child to have the opportunity to start the fireworks, which is super cool. Yeah.
Proceeds go to?
Proceeds go to the Marywood Park. Thank you. You guys should just do this for me.
We're going to keep you awake.
Proceeds go to the Marywood Park House and renovation of it. Yeah, so it's been a long night. Thank you. I appreciate the assistance.
Is there an age limit on the kid?
It is the Kaboom Kid. I think that term does not have a restriction per se, but I would imagine the hope is that we have a Kaboom Kid.
Thank you.
Kathleen, are you insinuating that Ralph cannot be the Kaboom Kid?
Well, I was going to suggest that we could make the age 70 years and 2 months. But that's up to you.
Anita, I think you have some stuff for us tonight.
Yes, I got back from the conference at the PSAB, and there were a couple resolutions. I just want to touch on a couple because there were a lot. One of them was for tax exempt properties, that there's $500 million back in the Pennsylvania's municipalities to help recoup lost revenue from tax exempt. Also, there's a program that we're trying to get through for future tax of 65 and over to be tax exempt for real estate, and that require a 10-year residency, and they have to reside in their home, and it allows up to 100% exclusion through the homestead, farmstead exclusion. What happens is when that house is sold, the taxes go back into effect. For fire responders and police who live in Pennsylvania but may work in a different state, they're trying to get through a death benefit so that they'll still get it even though they're not working within the state. We got yours through for the civic service or civil service. So that's on the docket for that, for getting that kind of brushed aside. so that we can directly hire instead of having to use a civil service committee. So that's another one. Let me see. That's a civil service one. We're trying again to get PennDOT to take over their roads and do the drainage and just take care of their streets, even if they run through our borough, that we shouldn't have to be responsible for them. I think that's about it. They did have one good one where commercial requesters for the right to know. Mike, you should probably know about this one, I guess you do, where we can start charging them. And it's to extend the days to 10 days for a request instead of 5. So it'll give us a little more time for that. So, and that's all.
So the
'Cause that's
Pennsylvania
enough.
State Borough Association
Mhm.
is an advocacy group that then will work with the state to pass new regulations on things that are challenging to small boroughs, large boroughs.
One of the other ones was the CDBG grant. They started out with 4,000 and above were the only ones that could apply for it. Then they decided to drop that. It has been amended to have no population whatsoever. So that anybody, because a lot of the boroughs that are out in the rural areas are not getting any monies to help revitalize their areas. And this would actually help them get monies so that they can help elderly who decide to stay and their houses are really bad. So that was a huge one.
Thank you for those updates.
You're welcome.
Adrian?
Nothing.
Okay. Hearing nothing from the dais, do we have any public comment related to anything this evening or any concerns going on in the borough? No public comment in the audience. Brittany, did we receive anything throughout the meeting? All right, hearing no public comment, I have one item that our borough manager would like to
I just want to send out a reminder to the community that we are actively seeking task force members for our redistricting process. The deadline to apply is this Friday, June 6th. So if you are interested, please get shoot us an email. We can handle the logistics after. But if we can just get your name and your application so we can get you in, that would be great. We are actively seeking volunteers, one individual from each ward. And if you have any questions, you can just reach out to me or Brittany directly and we will help you.
So this is an opportunity for anyone out there to start learning about what the process is like to help contribute to your borough.
That is correct. Correct, yes. Come join us.
Come join us. All right. With that, I call meeting adjourned. Thank you.